All right, good morning all. Calling the Finance Committee meeting to order 8:03 on the 21st of June. First order of business, Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please. I've asked Trustee Page to be our recording secretary today.
Okay, so Supervisor Hewitt here, Clerk Polowitz
here,
Assessor Trowbridge
Here.
Trustee Robinson
Here.
Trustee Page is here, Commissioner Young
Here.
Trustee Geis here, and Operations Manager Gerald Wolf.
I'm here.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Any public comment online?
There's one from Donna Propajal. Please consider restoring the amount that you cut out of the budget submitted by the Lisle Township Community Health Board. Our intention is to plan for the worst, although we hope for the best. I regret that you had so little faith in our abilities, Donna Propajal. That's the only one online, and there's nobody online right now.
Great, super. Executive session. Anyone think we need to go into executive session for any reason? No? Perfect. All right. So the main action, the only agenda item today really is to discuss possible action regarding recommending the final budget for the fiscal year 2023-2024. Just to set the framework, our first budget that we did a draft came out of the May 17th Finance Committee meeting. And we had a budget that was that we discussed at length and proposed. At the full board meeting on May 23rd, we discussed the budget again. We added in two budget expenses. One is for the mental health board. The second was to increase the software budget for the enterprise version of the Pantry Soft software, which was approximately $2,145. As an outcome from that meeting, so the May 23rd board meeting, we submitted our initial budget, which had budget in a funding level $2,658,550, which was what we envisioned our total township and G&A funding income to be. Expenses in that budget were $3,447,960. So the impact to the reserves was going to be $616,480 to the township reserve fund and $172,930 to the G&A reserve fund. So that's where we stood as of May 23rd. In the last full board meeting, we were informed of a number of changes. One, the supervisor informed the board that Lisle Township had been approved for $110,000 Illinois state grant. We also found out that we had a $12,500 grant from DuPage County for the Lisle Township Food Pantry. As a result of that, I'm recommending that the committee would recommend that we would increase the grant income in the budget from $60,000 to $122,500 to reflect those grants that we know have been approved.
Rest of the government's on the way.
Thank you for that. And I'm sorry to get started early, but I just wanted to be respectful of everyone's time. So that's one recommendation I would make. The other piece there were two other pieces of business that we discussed in the May 20 full board meeting of June 14th. One is the supervisor indicated that we will be reapplying for the ARPA grant funding from DuPage County, which had some potential budget items which were discussed by the board. We had a rather rushed discussion, and I think in the fairness to the process, that's when I asked, could we take this to the next finance committee meeting rather than trying to make decisions in that meeting? So I'll ask for the supervisor to talk through that again, because I think that we may want to reflect that in the final budget. So that's really one of the reasons we wanted to meet today. Just a reporting item, we did reach agreement on the financial or the compensation for the elected officials. I would just recommend that we reduce the budgeted salary by the supervisor because we came up with a number to reflect the compensation repayment plan. It's around $8,700. Just that was an action item that came out of the last meeting, so I thought we should reflect that in the budget. Also discussed, and I think that's what the public comment was that there's a potential that the mental health board will not be doing a needs assessment of $40,000, and that would reduce their budget ask by $40,000. They are not scheduled to meet until June 28th. So I'll ask the Finance Committee to think about if we want to reduce the amount of their budget by $40,000, or if we want to leave it at that level. And again, it is a budget. It's not committed to spend. It's just what, so they have not asked us to reduce. They've not yet approved a reduced budget. So, and we have to get our budget finalized by the 27th. So the day before that meeting. So I'll ask the board to think about that. We can come back to that point. I've also had a chance to go through the details of what our expenses have been. The township expenses have been through 6/16. There were two areas where our professional services have exceeded what I anticipated or what we had budgeted on a month-over-month basis. Our accounting services will exceed our monthly planned budget in the first 6 months. I looked at some of the details of what it is. It's really around resolving historical payroll issues, supporting the audit process, and also to support the transition of financial operations to township personnel. We budgeted approximately $5,000 a month, and it looks like based on the first 3 to 6 months of spend, that we will be over the $60,000 annual budget by about $24,000. So I would recommend that I would ask the board or the Finance Committee to recommend that we increase the amount for the accounting services by $24,000. Expectation is that by the end of September, when the audit's done, when we have personnel in place who are taking a lot more responsibility, that we will be back at that $5,000 a month for supplementary services to support our folks doing the financial operations. The other area is legal services. They've exceeded what we'd anticipated the budget of about $4,000 a month. But in the first 3 months of the year, again, the legal services have supported resolution of historical payroll issues. They helped with finalization of board rules, establishing the personnel and finance committees. I would recommend that we increase the legal budget by $12,000 on the annual basis to reflect what has been spent so far. My discussion with the attorney, and she's not here today, is that we actually can actively look for ways to minimize spend. One being in our regular board meetings, that if there's any items that require participation by the attorney, we schedule those at the front, so that she doesn't have to, and their firm doesn't have to participate for the entire meeting. So I think there are ways that we can minimize legal services. The other is leveraging TOI a lot more effectively maybe than we have. So I think there are ways, but just to reflect what's already been spent, we will have to I would recommend we increase that budget by $12,000. The other two items that came up when we talked about and I asked the supervisor to speak to this for the whole Finance Committee to make an assessment or a recommendation. The supervisor proposed using that Illinois infrastructure grant of about $110,000, or exactly $110,000, to fund solar panels. So I'll ask the supervisor to provide an update on that ask. And then the other big one was if there is an application by Lisle Township to DuPage County for the ARPA grant. It could be approaching $500,000 is what we'd be asking for, what that would look like. And if we in the Finance Committee want to recommend to the board that we take those specific items that were listed, and hopefully there's an update today, and then apply them to the specific budget lines in anticipation that that grant would come through. Again, this is the budget. This is not what we are committing to spend. It's just what we anticipate we might spend. So those are really the issues that I want to get guidance from or help the Finance Committee reach a recommendation on, so that we can go forward and get our budget finalized by the 27th. Any questions? Any other input? Anyone aware of any other issues that we could talk about from the Finance Committee point of view?
What was in Donna Pepperchow's statement? What was she asking again?
That was so in the last board meeting. One of the a public comment was that there was a shift left.
There you go. Got it.
Oh.
I see your big dog. Well, yeah. I've never been down there. I've been, that's weird.
Well,
Thank you so much.
That one of the public, members of the
What
public,
was the amount?
it was $40,000. It was for a needs assessment by one of the action items of the mental health board. It's $40,000.
Is there not needs assessment as part of the annual study?
They actually had discussed during their last board meeting, but I don't think that they need to do a needs assessment.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they were getting a lot of input from, or a lot of data sources locally from Impact DuPage in particular, and from the DuPage County Needs Assessment. And so they feel like they were more than able to take the information from those different data sources and forego needs assessment. They're going to go through that at the next meeting, but
So we don't need to worry about that request at this point.
Well, no, I'm just saying that I think they also believe that they could be spending money in other ways. They just want to come back as a group and define what they're going to be asking for the total sum. And again, understanding that I think after hearing from their long discussion about the topic, I think that they have a number of doctors on their board, for example, and so they feel like with the data that they're able to accumulate currently, they don't need one currently. So the number may come back to us as a different number, is what I would suspect. It would likely be lower.
Yeah, what we budgeted was 75,900. Again, this is a loan that will get repaid when they collect their levy. But so then that number may be less. You're saying based on
it may be, but they haven't decided. They just need to have a time to come back and finish that discussion, I feel like, and also finish the discussions of whether they feel like that money could be used in other places.
Yeah.
I would just say that I'm not 100% with your premise. I think the budget is the working document that you should be working off of. Of course, you need enough money to be able to function. However, I don't think you just throw the money in there to cover any expectation. I think the budgeted numbers should be a direct correlation to what your plan is. That's just a different premise of how to look at the budget.
Yeah, fair comment. And last year we did adjust the budget. What was it? January? I can't remember.
Yeah,
February.
February.
It was
yeah.
passed in February.
Right.
8th.
So, what I would suggest is six months in that you do a forecast. What you look at actuals, you forecast what you can spend for the next 6 months, and we may adjust the budget at that time as well. So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, but in fact, I would say that was a very wrong thing to do too. I'm not saying that you shouldn't change one or two things, that if things are out of skew of what you expected, or there's a surprise to what happened that year, but to go through the whole budget at the end of the year is just very clear that you've screwed the year up, in all honesty, of what your plan was. So
that we have collectively, because we spent before we budgeted.
And we're about to do that again because we've already spent so much money without the budget. The budget has not been our guide, and now we're already, you just proposed to ask more for the accountant and more for the attorney, and it's just by the past of what they've just done, because it's been wildly overspent. So now we have to either catch up, or we have to increase our budget, and we're in a corner.
What is the other solution?
The other solution, quite honestly, is stick to the budget. So if we've overspent or feel that we've overspent to this point, and especially, the attorneys and accounting fees that we've seen go dramatically higher than years past, we hold the line. Salaries too. I mean, hold the line, and we just have to make it work. Just what we do at home.
That's right.
Yeah.
What is the situation, just as we're discussing this, what is the situation? And you know what? Do you have your notes from what you just shared with us?
Mm-hmm.
Can you share them with Trustee McGovern so he has them? What are we doing about the second driver? We've not hired anyone, correct? Okay,
No, these
so
are.
there, these are just that, right? So I'm just looking, yes, because what we're doing is, and then we're gonna keep doing this, right? Because we're gonna keep putting ourselves in a situation where we're having to keep adjusting the budget for what we've spent in the rear instead of really truly strategically planning the spend. I don't know.
We're fixing.
We're right.
So one minor reminder is that in the last year, when the original 23 budget was passed in December, when we understood that there was going to need to be an adjustment, and it started to the conversation started happening in September. But any which way, so there's.
Oh, I'm not saying it's not a surprise. But I think we have to learn from what's happened the last 2 years so that we don't. It's not we can't keep doing that, right?
Absolutely.
So it's just not good practice. It's not what we committed to doing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I was gonna say, we've been playing catch up, right? So, I mean, we're dealing with some historical issues, around payroll and compensation. And so we're at a point now where we've got those behind us. We're dealing with a transition of personnel and assuming new responsibilities, and particularly in the financial operations. There's been a number of changes there, and I think we're trying to finally get on top of that. We've designated we've asked the township to designate one person specifically with responsibility for that, provide the support so that person can assume more responsibilities. Each one of the professional services firms has their billing has come down from April, May, and June. Their numbers are all coming down because we're being less reliant on them.
100%, and that's going to be great as we move forward. But we already spent it. We already right. So I don't know. And obviously this is discussion, right?
Right?
So
Yeah. No. I want to make sure I'm fully versed.
Well, we reduce our reliability. I don't know how to say it.
Reliance.
We're reducing our reliability,
Exactly.
which is great.
Yeah.
So we're not going to continue to
Right,
overspend,
yeah.
but we already did it.
Right. But it's done.
So at
it's
least
done.
we're not digging ourselves
Right.
deeper. That's great. But how do we address the fact that we?
So I would even like just going to the legal supervisor. Number one, you have $12,000 anticipated payments for the prior year attorney billing. I personally would remove that. There's no indication that we need to pay that. We do have reserves. We do have, not that I want to spend out of them, but God forbid it comes. We also have a contingency, as well. I don't think that should be something that should be on the budget. That's number one. Number two, I think the special project tax attorney should be a separate line because that's how I feel, because that's a separate focus of what is happening. The ongoing ongoing employment attorney services of $5,000. This is all coupled into 1628. So we have $5,000 allotted for that. Plus we have HR consulting services of $20,000. I feel like this is an abundance of money that we're throwing at it, along with $48,000 of ongoing township attorney services. And now it was suggested that we add $12,000 more to it. I think we need to cut that. And, part of the reason is that money, if you put it in there, can be allocated any way you want in legal services. So if you're putting a $15,000 towards a past payment that could or could not show up, may or may not show up, that could be reallocated to existing. And I don't think that that's the intent of what we want to do.
Sorry, just for clarification. I understand your point. The prior year attorney billing, I think there were two components to that. One was for the services from our current firm. The other was potentially for services of the prior legal
But we know
representation.
that's not going to be billing.
Right. So
we
that's not in that 12,000.
Anticipated payments for prior year billing.
That's for.
How do we not know what that is?
Well, we didn't finalize that bill. It was like 9,600 or something like that. That was for work done in the prior year that got paid in this fiscal year. So that's already been paid, that money. Effectively, 9,600 of it's been paid to the firm that your data represents.
So that's $9,600, so that goes
You don't need anything in the budget, it's already paid.
But
It's paid in the
paid
current fiscal.
on this fiscal year.
Because it wasn't approved at the meeting in April. So it was approved in the next year.
Okay, then I would remove the $12,000, make the 48. Because, you know, what is that, 57.6. Because that is the ongoing township services.
I understand your point. Well, appreciate your point.
It's, do we want to cut costs or not? Do you know what I mean? And this is one of the things that, we're just kind of adding numbers to it. Like I said, the ongoing attorney services too. So what is the budgeted item, or what is the amount? Legal supervisor, right now we have it at $80,000 budgeted. So 15,000 of that has been allocated to the IMRF, correct?
Correct.
So, and just what I said, I would separate that out, and we watch the 15,000, so we're clear on the separation of those.
I think being as detail oriented as possible is going to be important, so just lumping things, because if there's that lump amount and one line, you know, one area sucks up that fund, then what about the other pieces that are in it? You're right, we need to see clearly, very specifically, the breakout of the spend of each of those areas. I think
And
that's
it'll
important.
clear us out, it'll help us out for next year.
For next, yeah.
Too, so
we'll
here
plan
we don't need that 15,000.
Yep, I see that.
So there's a few things going on here. One is the documentation from an accounting perspective of how this gets documented. And the second is how, I mean, there's two different methods, meaning, are you planning to take a line item in each of the different budget documents and expand them? That's going to be difficult from an accounting perspective to have, I would assume. But if you want to, again, have these be understood that, okay, these are the specific pieces from a legal perspective that are being anticipated, understanding that there have been a continuous lowering of all of the expenses incurred and spent.
Yeah. So I understand the point. We want to make sure we understand every dollar that's been spent, every budget line. I do. And so the one is that we create a budget line specifically for things like that, the special tax project. The other is the supervisor suggesting that we have budget notes that we keep track of. I'm just thinking the logistics of adding a new account into our accounting system and managing that on an ongoing basis for a one-off. So I would probably recommend that.
I don't think it's just for a one-off. I think there's probably other areas that we've talked about breaking down too, right? Just being more specific of what the dollar amount is for.
Yeah, sorry, I was just thinking the tax attorney, that's sort of a one-off thing this year.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right, yeah. So I'm not minimizing the importance of the opportunity to create some new accounts specifically to track expenses. Just saying that might not be an appropriate one, because we can just manage it in the next year's budget discussion.
And part of your goals, Trustee Robinson, is that you present a different method of financial reporting. You know, I've been talking about this for a year at least too, of trying to have on the monthly basis an easier method, more obvious to, more transparent to everyone, where we're at with each month of our spending, where we're at with budget. So it's easier to see the spends specifically. Right,
and to make adjustments to your point. Okay, we got to slow down on legal services for the next couple of months because we've overspent already. So that when we have that discussion with our attorney as well, what is our plan for legal support for the township for the rest of the year, or the now and for the rest of the year as well.
So what number did that end up being? That's the 48. Or
Well, I know you're suggesting that number.
well, you suggested it, it's right there.
Sorry.
Legal supervisor, $48,000 ongoing township attorney services.
Well, that was the May 23rd. So what I would suggest, what I'm suggesting is that for the first quarter, what I'm suggesting is that we almost, because we're coming up on the end of the first quarter, that we look at that our expenses would be in, so for the attorney specifically, I would say in Q1 we budget 20,000 because that's effectively what we've spent. I think it was 9,000 in March, or April, 6,000 in May, and approximately, let's say 5,000 in June. Then I would say Q2 is 12,000, so that's 3,000 a month. Q3 is 3,000 a month, another 12,000, and then Q4 is 16,000, 4,000 a month. We'll do the math right. No, 4,000, 4,000, and approximately 5,000 because we're going to be back in the budget in the Q4 and year-end close and annual meeting and things like that. So I'm almost, so the number I'm suggesting is 60,000 for attorney services. Again, broken by quarter, Q1 is 20,000. And again, that's effectively already been spent. Q2, we get back to the 4,000 a month. Q3, we get back to the 4,000 a month. And then Q4, we bump it a little bit, add some, just in case there's extra work again around year end. So I'm suggesting, or I'm suggesting that Finance Committee anticipate recommending 60,000 for that. So that whole budget line would go up by 12,000.
So then I think to myself, so we're increasing to compensate what we've already done. Then what does that look like when we budget plan for next year?
I think we get to a state, and I think that's a discussion we have. I think we had an over-reliance on the attorney to deal with.
So we expect a reduced budget?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I do. I think we're getting to a point, you know, I don't think we need the attorney nearly as much, if at all, at our board meetings. I don't.
No, it's a reduced spend for this year. I'm talking about then, what does that look like for next year? Because we're already budgeting based on the spend, but if we're going to be reducing our costs, then are you saying then that the next year's budget then should be significantly reduced planning wise? Or are we just putting on our, I just want to be thinking about that because.
Sorry, finish your thought.
Yeah, that's.
I think again, we had a bubble of work. Right. I think we all acknowledge that there were some issues that had to be dealt with, whether it be around compensation, whether it be setting up the board and these committees. That required extra support in the first quarter of this year. Actually, the end of last year, first quarter of this year. That work is done now. That's not an ongoing. So I think we get back to around 4,000, budgeting 4,000 a month. And it may be less than that. That's just.
I would just add, based off of what you said, that we've now identified areas that we could reduce the budget, that the fourth quarter should be a lot less. So we might be able to stick within the 57,600 that you have with the 48,000 and then the 9,600, because we've got 20,000 in the first quarter, 12,000 in the second quarter, 13 in the third quarter before we put any measures in to cutting the cost. So I would suggest that we cut the fourth quarter to put us back in line to where we are. That's the only way we're going to stick with it. You know, so that's it. The other part is the ongoing employment attorney services. That's $5,000. We're already allocating $20,000 to the HR, and then I'll stop.
What more do we need from them this calendar year? Are you anticipating?
So one of the pieces that you all need to I guess kind of get with or at least I would suggest some time with them deciding on what some of the transition pieces that you want to be, whether that's for example when I was looking at the expenses of what we have incurred, one of the expenses was for doing the background checks. I expect that any background checks in the future are going to be done by them because they have the unless we create a contract with a background check company, they have the ability to do that relatively cheaply. So that was one of the expenses that we were doing. I would expect 20,000 to be
The
that
background
could
checks are
definitely be cut back.
$75. Background checks are $75. So if we're gonna pay them $20,000 for background checks, and we're not hiring anyone, what would we need?
I'm not saying that that's only the piece, and what the main piece that you're going to wish is expenses for discussing any of the implementation of creation of programs from an HR perspective that you may need help with. And so that's, for example, Lisa is new with benefit management. She could need some help with some professional HR help with creating the systems that she's going to be managing. There's
could we take advantage of TI in those situations?
I think that there's more help than she's going to initially in order to, and again, we've never historically had an HR department in this township. So making sure that we set that up with the people that wish to do that, time with the personnel committee as the lead. But for example, if you wish to have exit interviews, I think there is quite an option to cut that. That figure hasn't been discussed for some time. And their costs have been very much going down. So there, if you look at the cost incurred over last year and the year before, and in the last
well, the cost went up because of the hiring. Now the cost is going to go down because it's not hiring. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, why do we need to continue to retain them? Is that an area that we can cut? Background checks are $75. So we really, I mean, exit interviews we can issue. I'm just trying to, if that's an area we can cost and show some prudence, I think that, like, why not?
Of course, and we are continuing to do so, but at the same time, we're also starting with this personnel committee. You might want some professional help in doing some of the things that you're wishing to do. But again, for example, the 708 board just asked me to put it out for bid. They finished their decision with what they want for the job description. So they wanted that to go to Connor and Gallagher to get put as a job that they're offering. Then they're going to, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yes, that is, but there needs to be, I thoroughly agree, but there's going to be, I'm sure, expenses that are going to come out of that loan.
I guess I just don't understand what are the successes we've had with Connor and Gallagher in the past. I haven't heard of many of the positives, so maybe I'm missing that because I'm not seeing the value.
Okay, well, I'd love to. For example, they have trained about 5 of our staff to do CPR. They do ongoing training on a monthly basis that I find extremely helpful. I was actually there's a new series that they are doing right now that is extremely helpful with benefit management and how we can expand the options that employees have and the education of us from a internal perspective of this. When it comes to the employees that we have hired, I found that the level of recruitment has been extremely when I listen to some other hiring agencies at the same time, I'm extremely impressed with their recruitment abilities.
We've lost several of the people that we
have
paid
lost quite a few. I guess that's what I'm thinking of as a negative.
We lost people that they brought in to recruit. So and CPR, our districts offer CPR. We need to, here's the thing, we are underutilizing the network of resources that we have intergovernmentally.
Within our township too.
Even within our town, within our township. I mean, I can't imagine why we couldn't bring someone in to do a CPR class and invite Wheatland and invite Downers Grove. Like, I feel like we're trying to operate in a silo and absorb the cost of doing that instead of being more collaborative and taking advantage of resources that are already available. Why would we have a HR consulting firm manage our CPR?
They are not managing it. I'm saying that was one of the options because they are about a mile away, and we're also working with Illinois Benedictine and the Lisle Fire Department to have another CPR class at Benedictine.
So how does Connor and Gallagher benefit us then?
Again, they give us the one-on-one attention when it has come to building our staff, which was incredibly important.
And several which have left.
There's been a few when we had, for example, a new department and in a new program. Sometimes, again, with the DOT certification, the last 2 have been a challenge.
Yeah.
And so we, as
I'm
we
sure
have.
they're great. That's not what I'm saying. We're not seeing the value. I'm with trustee McGovern.
I'm not here on the daily, but because of the personnel committee, I'm really not seeing the value. I
So wouldn't
think
it
it's a
be,
big budget expense that we could minimize.
wouldn't it be helpful for the personnel committee to meet with potentially Connor and Gallagher and see what things that they would wish and how to, and again, Connor and Gallagher.
In a
has been-
budget, time is of the essence too.
Okay,
I do
so
have a question. How much money do you figure that we allocate for each hire for Connor Gallagher as far as recruiting for it? You should have kind of an idea of
Well, there's
if
a
we're going
placement
out
per
to
head.
bid.
So it generally, it has cost on the Indeed market, it generally costs about $1,500 to $2,000 to do the recruitment that's needed to get the hire.
But what's the direct hire placement fee?
There's an placement fee per hire. There's a cost related to, for
So when
example,
Connor
putting
Gallagher
ad-
brings up a hire in,
Mhm.
we're not paying them any kind of placement fee?
No,
Just a 1,500 to 2,000 is to them.
what it is the cost associated with advertising on Indeed. Indeed, for example, which is one of the premier places.
But we're
they
still
charge
paying
per
them
click.
to bring
To
to
review
bring
the
the person
Yes.
through.
resumes.
And then so what they
So
do,
what's the cost there?
again, it's in total, what we get, and when you look at those bills, I can, for example, at the next personnel meeting or at the next meeting, or frankly, in the next week, I can get you, again, copies of all the receipts, so you can see exactly what we paid for in HR.
But can you just
And I can
answer
give
the
you
question
another
of what
proposal.
we pay per person?
We should
Like I
kind
just
of-
said, it's about at that 1,500 to
No,
2,000
there's
with
no
the
way
that's the
Indeed cost, with the Indeed cost and the hours associated with recruiting and reviewing those resumes.
It's only $1,500 to $2,000.
To employ Connor and Gallagher to hire
Per
one
person.
What they do
Then why
is
was
they,
the bill $8,000?
because there were some there was some, essentially one of the pieces that has been happening is the billing has been essentially been building up. So they only charge when they have things to, for example, when, for example, they finish a recruitment with whomever, then they charge us for that. When they have, once a month, they have a accounting of all of their services. If you want Connor and Gallagher specifically itemized for you in the last year, I can do that.
I think that's
Here's the
And
challenge.
we can have that
The
in the
challenge
next 2
with the
days.
number is that whatever that number ends up being per hire, we have not utilized their suggestion that that person goes into that role. We start off that way, but then we change it. So we are not utilizing their services of finding a specific person for a specific job and sticking with that.
I don't.
So that's why it's not worth it.
I don't think that that's the case, Clerk Polowitz, but the fact of the matter is that we're hardly planning to expand our employment in the future. The main things that I would expect you thinking about doing in the next year is primarily as we're looking at a part-time or a driver full-time for the service that we're likely
no, and I did, is there
extremely fast.
an informational, just a question, informational meeting being held with the community to educate them on the driver program?
So there's continuous informational programs and I know that Operation Manager Joe Wolf has gone to a variety of senior services. Alexia has gone with him and the Director of Senior Services have gone with them. We're looking to expand those continuously to more and more locations of that information that needs to get out about that.
If we're looking to cut, if we're looking, I just don't see the value of Connor and Gallagher. I think that would be the first area I would cut.
All right,
Me
thank
too.
you. So I would suggest two things. One, if we want a longer discussion around the transportation program, we put that on the agenda for the next full board meeting.
That was just a question because that impacts the budget. That's why.
I
asked the
agree,
question.
I agree. That if we want to get into the specifics of
I
the
didn't want
program.
to, I just asked one question.
Okay, thank you. So there is on currently budget is, excuse me, is $20,000 for HR consulting, which I think is the number that the clerk mentioned. Is that an opportunity to reduce? I think is what we're saying. And what would that number look like?
There are, but here's the one piece that I would let you know is because of the billing having been what it has been, there's been, I would say, some need to understand what has been spent in the last 3 months, finishing up the billing of the recruitment efforts, meaning that they didn't, they tend to bill in the rears. So after there is an amount that has been spent, then they bill it. And so my point is can you give me 2 days to get you the information as to all the receipts for the last 3 months that can help you understand what we've spent so that you understand exactly what you're looking to budget. Does that make sense?
So what you're saying is we have to make sure we include them in the budget because we've got to pay them for the past.
We already have paid them. And part of what we're making sure that we're understanding is they were for services that were incurred prior to even the formation of some of these committees. So we're trying to make sure that, for example, when we pass this budget, we don't have to amend it in the future.
All right, so we've talked about 3 specific professional services firms: the accounting, the legal, and HR consulting. I do want to come back and revisit those just so we're all in agreement as to what those numbers should look like. But I think an important discussion is around grants, right? And potentially capital improvements. So
no, but I don't think that grants should be part of a budget.
Sorry.
It's a grant, it's a bonus. It's like, when I budget, like I can't budget hoping that, I get tipped out on some of the things that I do. So the classes I do, I can't, that's extra. I still have to work with what I know, the known number that I'm working with. I know I'm not.
It's very clear.
But I don't think we should, even if you 100% know you're going to get a grant, that should not be part of your budget planning.
And they're not annually renewable
Yeah,
at all.
Here's the issue with that is that we cannot get that money unless we budget to put it somewhere. So it's not even possible to receive that money if we don't have a plan to spend it.
Having a plan to spend it should not be part of our actual operating budget, though.
It's a part of a lot of budgets. When you look over a lot of townships, for example, York Township or a number of the other townships, they budget the incoming grant money, understanding that money is going to cover what is going to be spent. Understanding also that nothing is being spent without having your all approval. So, for example, if one of the pieces is the garden, the outdoor summer or winter type of greenhouse garden, then that couldn't be purchased without the board approving it.
That's
so
not
even
true, because if you budget it, you already have their approval to spend for that.
No, we have a purchasing policy that requires your approval for anything over $5,000.
That's true.
So there isn't the ability for that spend to happen without your approval. So it can't, if you want to have any options and some of these grants they require you to move quickly. And if we would have to amend our budget in order to get that money. And so if we do not put this in the budget, there is no possible way that we can get some of the grant monies.
For solar panels, for windows, that could all be capital improvement. And we do have a budgeted item for capital improvement. So the bigger ticket items that we truly want is already in the budget.
So those bigger ticket items weren't in the solar project. That's not in the budget right now.
No.
Well, but
and so
we have a capital improvement.
There's a fund, right?
There's a fund, but if it's not in this year's budget, we cannot spend it.
But we don't need to write out solar panels. It's a capital.
But we cannot spend it unless, and we cannot get to that if we've already received this money. We cannot get to it unless it's in this budget.
Yeah, if it's in the fund.
No, it has
deposited.
That what you're talking about is we already have the money in the bank for $2 million last year. That's in the budget. That's already in the fund, but we cannot spend any of that. Nothing. We can't spend any of that unless it's in our budget this year.
Okay.
Is it not capital improvements in it?
Like how specific is the word? Like it has to be.
No, I'm saying that, for example, the capital improvements that are currently in our budget there's no way that they could include a solar panel because there's a variety of things that need to be done that really we couldn't switch over. So if you keep the capital improvement plan where it is, the solar panels cannot be done.
But you can't write it with like parentheses around here's our funding based on property taxing, and then here's our funding based on grants, and then it equals this.
No,
No,
that's not
it
how a
can't be
budget,
written like that.
that's not how a budget will, that's not how we can spend with a budget. So we could
Well, we were talking
never-
about the transparency and how it's appearing on the budget. And to me, that seems like that's the transparent way to read it, but that's not how you can receive it. That's what you're saying.
we can't, and part of the piece is with the ARPA grants, they're going to need to be decided quickly. And what happens with these ARPA grants is you put in the receipt and you either get the approval. And so we're either going to, if I don't want to skip into the part where I'm trying to give you an update on the ARPA grant. But what's going to happen is we're going to give them a submission, and then of what we're trying to do. And I'm taking exactly what we came up with the last meeting. I do not know, and I have not been given any confirmation that the solar would be a part of the ARPA coverage. There's very specific things that the ARPA does cover, and I have not been given the approval that does, that is even an option.
So based on what you had told us last year with the ARPA grant, is that they required the money for the building that you were looking at to be in the capital improvement fund. So they knew that we were focused on the building,
Mm-hmm.
and it went into the capital improvement. That's all I'm saying, is that if it's for windows, if it's for solar panel, it could be in the capital improvement. You just have to identify what it's for. So you could switch it. You could switch your capital improvements through your budget, right? Through the audit.
No.
Don't you write what the capital improvement is for? So I
So-
don't think what you're saying is actually true.
And I beg to differ, and I'd love to have the attorney weigh in on this particular matter, because I am 100% sure that we've discussed on this, and we have your Dana on call until 9:30 if we needed to call in.
Do we
Do
think
you
this
see
would?
clarity
Well,
in
why
that?
don't we,
Yes.
like, if
What
there's
did you
more
think?
things, I would put it on hold. So if we have more things we have to ask her, then we just quickly ask her that. So that's all I'm saying. And I do echo what Trustee Guy said about, those ARPA funds really should be our wish list items. That we should not be putting them into the budget, in expecting a grant for them. Otherwise we wouldn't get them. It's just.
Well, you could put them in and just label them as
Wish
grants.
My point is that it can be understood that we
There you go.
only buy the certain pieces related to this list if we get a grant. And so each of these pieces would be coming back to you asking, okay, have they been approved or not from the grant? If they've not been approved, then you'll know it immediately. I'm expecting a quick answer, relatively quick. So I'm trying to make sure that you all understand as soon as we get that information. But I've also been told that we wouldn't be able to, and there's a few other questions that are going to come up, I'm guessing, in the next meeting with regards to the estoppel letter. So we may wish to make sure that we at 9:15 come back to at least asking your Dana for some input if it comes to 9:15.
Did you hear what Commissioner Young had suggested? Just put a line item for grants, put the whole amount in the grant.
As expenses?
Oh, it's a budget item. Just list them, say ARPA grant solar panels, ARPA grant this, ARPA grant that. Then the way it's identified.
It needs to be
You
identified.
can't spend it unless you get the ARPA.
Mhm.
And it's, and then approved by the board,
Yeah.
Well, right.
But then she can show, there it's in the budget.
All right, is everyone comfortable with that?
Yes.
And that actually is a good way, because it's showing that we'll only be able to get this if we
Mhm.
get the grant.
So,
Glad you came.
no, it's good.
I earned my keep, eh?
Sorry, there's no cookies today.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh,
I was gonna get done.
have dog biscuits in my purse.
All right, so then is everyone comfortable with that? So,
Yes.
I know this isn't well, it's up there. It's not the final list because there were some things that, for instance, Mono software, it was clearly the direction of the last meeting for that should not be budgeted because that will not be approved this year. So that should be taken out. So there were some things, for instance, solar panels, but you're not sure that should be in here.
I think that I don't know that, and I'm getting approval of what could potentially be allowed, and I have not gotten any confirmation that that's even allowed.
Okay, so
What do you got to lose?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you don't even
Strike it
think
if not,
of a
yeah.
Possible grant.
so this is, sorry, just the mechanics. Go ahead.
But there's the 110,000 state grant.
Right.
And so that is different, that it's the 110 specifically for capital funds or for capital improvements.
Does it list what it has to be?
They're very general. No, it does not.
Well, I think you've got more than enough than $110,000.
Well, and the one piece that is in the budget now is 75,000 for the windows replacement, right? So
So you could use that to do something.
that's what I'm thinking. Right?
So the ARPA is likely to allow for window replacement. So I'm trying to understand which different grants will allow what, and window replacements can be used likely in the ARPA. Because, for example, Naperville got windows replaced with theirs.
Okay, so two moving parts. One, one is that the Illinois grant potentially and should be used for solar panels. I want to make sure the finance committee's aligned with that, which would mean that we would have to increase, I was going to say increase the capital budget, because right now it's only got 75,000 in it for replacement of windows. But if we're going to use this strategy, potentially we could have another budget line that says Illinois grant.
Why would you say
Grants.
Grants
And load it up.
for both, for everything that we're getting.
For all of it,
Because
because
you prioritize what you want to get done, your capital expenditures. Devote to 75,000 to your town, and then list whatever you can for the rest.
I still have an issue that, we're putting, the solar panels, over, because that is a wish list item, over something that we actually need, which are the windows. Do you know what I mean? So we're looking, the grant that we know we've got is, we're putting as the solar panels, and then we're playing a game to see if we can get the ARPA grant for the windows. Do you follow what I mean? I think we need to take care of our needs first.
We do, but we also
Unless
need to
we
know what the
budget.
timeline is for windows, because windows are not, that's not a quick replacement.
Turnaround either.
Yeah, it's not. The ordering of window, I mean, do you have any idea? Have you got any?
Oh, I had no idea.
Some of us do.
Yeah, it's several months, and you can't do it in the middle of winter.
Right, and so one of the things that is being done is they're being caulked so that when we do get to them, they're not going to be worse off than where they are. We're going to need electricity. So solar is one of those pieces that covers a need that we're going to have as well.
Okay.
No, but I was asking about the windows.
I agree. And that again, I think that as soon as we understand the ARPA, which is like I said, I think that
Caulking the windows right now.
so Stephen, one of our volunteers, is caulking the windows.
Who is Stephen?
So Stephen is
What's the expense of the caulking?
I'm sorry, who is Stephen?
it's my significant other.
The caulking, I'm trying to evaluate, like, the caulk is not, it's not expensive, but it's not inexpensive. Is the amount of time we're taking to invest in caulking on the windows, if we're gonna replace the windows, the best plan, if we're really gonna get the windows?
So here's the issue is that right now, literally some pieces are falling out. And so
that needs to be the priority.
it is being done literally this month and this week has been one of the pieces that the caulk has already had. And what have you not? We need to again get bids. This is something that is going to be, I'm guessing, a 3-month process of getting the bids that we need and
then
deciding
another 3 to 4 months for them to be ordered.
So I think that we're going to go through a winter and we're going to go through some time with the need to have this done, with the caulking done to make sure that there's not further damage.
But then when would the bill be paid? See what I'm saying? Like,
so this is likely going to be in the spring that you're going to have, and in my assumption is going to be in the spring that we're going to actually be getting to the windows. It's going to take some time.
So that's next budget.
but that's my
the risk,
point.
right?
Is everybody going to put it down? we're pushing. The window should be a priority. There should be bids now. We need estimates now, because I know from people who've done new construction, windows are taking 3 to 4 months, sometimes 6 months. I know someone who had to change their whole plan because it was going to be almost a year before they could get the windows they wanted. So now we're looking at paying a bill in a completely different fiscal year.
There's going to be some upfront costs when it comes to the windows. A lot of times that you're going to have a contract that is going to need certain stages of money involved. I think that in the next month, you are going to get a whole lot more defined bids for a lot of reasons. They're coming. We're trying to make sure that they're
How many companies
coming as
have we
fast
already
as you can.
contacted?
Places for the windows, I've contacted 2 and I haven't had somebody come out yet.
Did we ask Naperville for their contact? Is that someone maybe they had success with?
Yes, actually, and I'll make sure that that we get more information from the.
Good, sorry, trying to get closure. So we are comfortable adding in a series of budget items specifically in anticipation of the ARPA grant. Is the finance committee in? So Supervisor Hewitt, if you can give me the updated list based on our last full board meeting, I can make sure those get added in. Okay, and what and the other question is solar panels versus windows. Currently, well, I guess we put that as a budget item. Sorry, as a grant item.
As a grant, yeah.
Okay.
I have another question at 1624 travel meetings and dues. What you have listed out here adds up to 15,000. Although on the budget, the line item, it says 25,000. So 1624.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So
Good
there's
catch.
10,000. Okay.
That's on me though. Thank you. Thank you for that
That's
catch.
okay. That's okay. Administration, we have 41,000 for outstanding balance and payment for NIU study. We only approved at the high $32,950, and that was for both. We had 2 contracts with them. One was for the study, and one was for the our strategic planning. So we shouldn't be paying them $41,000, and we're well past the time that was allocated for them. So again, that's $32,950. I wanted to ask about we already spoke about the HR consulting services.
What did we want to do there? It's currently budgeted at 20,000.
I don't feel like we need to spend $20,000 or kind of during Gallagher.
Okay. Sorry, but I think part of sorry, finish your thought.
That was
Yeah, I think the supervisor said some of this is past invoices playing catch up from the invoicing point of view. I think we're dealing with that across a range of vendors.
But why would it be $20,000 if we're only spending $1,500 to $2,000 per employee? And
what number would we like to put there?
5.
Is that, have we already spent that?
Yes, you've already spent that.
It can't fit into another budget because we have a lot that really kind of overlap.
Sorry, what else are you looking at? You say that overlaps?
Yeah.
I know I saw that. I mean, we have staffing even, salary contingencies.
Oh, you're saying use contingencies for some of this?
Well,
if we're gonna freeze hiring.
salaries, so they're consulting. Well, I don't know how much have we spent for them is, I guess, what the question is, and then no more. Like, again, we're either cutting or we're not cutting, and if we spent it all, and that was the problem with having a budget at the end of the quarter.
I know you said that we could have those numbers within 2 days. While we're sitting here, would it be okay for us to just ask, Lisa Rose if she could pull that number?
That's not going to happen within the next few minutes, and I think we need to give some time to make sure that this is accurate. Run a report on QuickBooks, make sure that this is accurate. So if you give us the next meeting is going to, although the packet information needs to be to you by Friday.
QuickBooks, Connor and Gallagher would be, and I'm not at QuickBooks Pro, but I do use it every day. You should be able to run a report just on that vendor, and it would show what the spend has been.
Right.
Okay, so I guess my point is if you
It wouldn't be
give us a
inaccurate.
day, how about this? If you give me a day to give I'll get our QuickBooks report.
But it's
Get
impacting
a-
our decision.
I understand that, but you're going to want to make a good decision and an accurate one. So in order to get you the numbers that you're just asking for, if you give me a day, we can make sure that we give you those numbers and that information. So that way it can go to everyone. And you all can make a little bit more of an informed decision because we just don't have that information right now at our fingertips.
So, the other part is outsourced payroll and accounting services at $60,000. Is that what you wanted to increase?
Yes.
For 24,000?
Yes.
So what is the outsourced payroll?
So that's what the services so there's, right now, we're using Nader Associates to augment our payroll in our accounting services. I envision that she's going to be part of our environment through the first Q1, definitely, because that's been a 34,500 spend. I envision that through Q2, she will continue to be involved. And then beyond that, we would look at minimizing either the services of her company or find a replacement. And there are services that we're looking at, and I'm envisioning that they are like $4,000 a month. So what I anticipate forecasting is 34.5 for the first quarter. We've already spent that. 25.5 for the second quarter. Again, there's audit, there's training for Lisa Rose, and there's residual accounting, cleanup issues, and then $4,000 a month beyond that. So that we have in-house staff that do majority of the functions, but we have backup behind them for things like getting ready for audits, things like doing special projects.
But we wouldn't
We
need the
haven't
payroll
had that
service
before.
to pay $4,000 a month to do that.
That's
And the
accounting.
step that they would be completing doesn't warrant that cost. And we've never had to have that service in the past. And now that we're gonna have somebody who's dedicated and properly trained, why would we want to do that? We can, when there's a special case, we can bring the accountant back in, and it's not a $4,000 a month expense.
Yeah, that's fine. If we think we can get to that point, that's why I want to have this discussion with everyone.
Yeah, no, but that's why it's a discussion. That's
the goal,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm not.
Okay.
So I don't think we should budget for payroll services.
It's not payroll services, it's accounting services.
It's not outsourced payroll.
It's not like
paychecks, or
It is not.
Well, this is what you were explaining, that it would be a payroll service is what you're looking to
Yeah,
achieve.
that's what he said.
So I think there's
Two parts. You
Right,
said one part was and then
accounting.
the second part was a payroll
Payroll.
service that we were looking at $4,000 a month. And I know that there has been discussion of using a payroll service. That's what I'm speaking to. I apologize.
no.
It's in there.
It's the payroll function of accounting. And so the payroll function of accounting is mostly going to be done by the bookkeeper.
So
But
we're not
there's
looking
other,
at any outsourced firm. So once that budget line item is approved, there's no outsourced firm that would cover that expense.
correct. But at the exact same time, there needs to be an accountant that has the certification and the ability to review and help the bookkeeper develop a program that is something that we can
But it wouldn't be
count on.
$4,000 a month.
I'm
It's
saying
a
that
couple hours a month. Like
part of this is understanding that there's going to be time needed at the beginning to get the setup started, to get Lisa trained. All of that stuff needs to be understood, that it's not
Who's
going to
doing
like
payroll now.
and Lisa and accountant Nader.
Right.
So quite honestly, payroll is, we have QuickBooks. Yeah, I mean, we've not had to have someone oversee the payroll person in the past. And she's being trained, and there's more to be trained, and I get that, but you would hope that she would be trained to be able to do the payroll for it. The accounting services or the audit, to prepare for the audit. I mean, the auditor does tell you what you need, and we have a lot of staff around here that can also help. I just, again, we're
Yeah, I
trying to
understand.
cut.
Yep.
Well, at least if Lisa Rose is on the call, is she able to let us know where she's at with her training, like, so that we can kind of assess how much longer we're gonna be looking at, using
Right.
this so heavily.
I mean, you don't want to leave her high and dry, and I totally get that.
Correct. We want to
But-
be successful.
And Linda Nader, as I recall, said 6 to 9 months would be the amount of time that would
That
be-
was QuickBooks training.
Nope, it was for bookkeeper training.
There's two components. One was the function of a bookkeeper, and the other was QuickBooks
Well,
specifically.
But by training by Linda Nader, I don't know.
She's actually got the supervisor ordered the books, the program, and Lisa is self-training right now.
Oh.
She's going through her books.
And there are checkpoints at the end of every chapter. And then she's
We're just
working.
looking for cuts, so we're trying to like,
Yeah, no,
every month helps,
Yep.
right? So if we're trying to, so that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so she's had her books for a while and she's begun her self-training.
This is great. So what would we be comfortable with? So just the number, I think 4,000, what I say, 4,000 a month. You think two?
How many out when I don't know. So what is the rate again an hour for Linda Nader?
175.
Oh, I don't even think you need to. I think, 3 to 5 hours a month of her reviewing what's happening each month is really reasonable. I would keep it at, and I don't know, maybe I'm am I crazy when I say that? I mean, the $175 an hour, even at 10 hours, that's only,
17.
right. And I don't imagine her being here doing 2 hours or 3 hours work every week. Do you?
No.
I think it'll be, I honestly, I do, at least through the third quarter. Because I think I want to make sure Lisa has the support, particularly around payroll. Because I think there are some unique things around payroll. Because there's so many hourly people and just the way it's structured here right now. So I would be comfortable at 2,000 for the per month for Q3. Maybe driving it down to 1,000 a month for Q4.
Okay, I think that's more reasonable.
So even with the amount of historical issues that we're trying to solve, you feel comfortable with
How
that?
much further
We
off?
spent a lot on solving that. Hopefully it's mediated.
The amount that we've already spent should have, we should have made good progress. In resolving
I think we're close to resolving all the open issues. It's my assessment. There's a few more payroll issues. I know there's still some issues to sort out, but part of what she's doing in the audit, and you talk to this, is she's putting together an audit book. So here's the steps we go through. So it's proceduralized. So next year we're a lot better prepared.
Doesn't the auditor have that?
The auditor comes in and audits what we've prepared to them. So this is how do we prepare to engage with the auditor.
They tell you what they need to audit.
There's a 40 step. There's a 40-step sequence that they ask for. I need this.
Right,
this.
they ask you.
Right. So part of it,
really need to put it.
but we have to say, okay, you got to run this report in this system. You got to, so it's proceduralizing
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So we've talked about an area to reduce. I think. So I'll redo the numbers and make this to do quickly in my head.
Yeah. So you've spent $60,000 so far on accounting with the 34.5 and the 25.5, and we're saying what, 3,000 on, so we're saying 4,000 more total.
We said 2K a month. So what's that? 6.
6,000
And then
more.
3, right? 6 and 3, so 9 more. All right.
Those 2 a
No,
month.
quarter is 3 months.
Q3 I said was 2K per month, so that's 6K, right? And then Q4 is at 1K per month, so that's 3,000. So
Got it.
So we're reducing that. So it's only so it's still, so rather than 24,000 in the fourth quarter, I'm saying it's going to be, we'll budget 9,000. So that's 11K difference. The increase in the budget.
Okay. We're making progress.
Yeah, no.
Well, that's going up.
Yeah.
Well,
We've
But
already
at
spent
least it's more accurate, right?
it. Yeah.
The other questions were salaries. Our actual was $373,000, but we're budgeting 610,000. Looking at, we don't have a salary to each of these positions that you wrote down. I did notice though that there is 2 receptionists part-time, but there's a receptionist under the full-time. So I'm not sure what that is. We also have transit drivers 2 that we have said that we're leaving at, or at least keeping at 1. So I'm not sure, how these numbers all add up. And again, if we are to reduce the budget, this is definitely a big ticket item.
Huge.
That we just need to address that, and maybe it needs to start being cut. Especially if we have so many third parties helping us.
So we have more staff available than ever. has Ruby always worked only 3 days a week?
Yes,
Okay,
she wishes to do that.
so, and then the other 2 days, what happened?
Cindy works the other 2 days.
No, but in the past, what happened those 2 days?
The other
Staff
here,
here, just
Yeah.
answer,
Mhm.
okay.
No, there was another staffer that worked 2 days for many
Oh,
years.
that's right.
Her name was Jane.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
I'm just looking at the
It
numbers.
saves on budget too with
Sure.
insurance, yes.
Yeah, and then what's the full-time receptionist role that's, I don't know.
So it sounds like there's some more salary discussions for trustee Robinson to,
Was that a plan? What?
there isn't, and I'm not sure what.
Okay, so
Well,
that's one that we can, so,
No, there's an office assistant, so I'm not sure if that is what if that was.
Maybe.
What,
I think this is the role that came in with the transit program.
that's right, that's an office.
That's
her
an
name-
office, it's
but
not
we don't
reception.
really need that. Why do we need that? What's the purpose of that?
Okay, so the office assistant is absolutely critical. She's a part of the DOT safety conscious program. She's been trained to take the calls and she has to do a variety of other pieces that are not at all included with the receptionist. And that are very much focused on the transportation system program. She's doing LIKEEP and she's doing passports and she's extremely active and making
Well,
sure.
everybody's doing passports, everyone's trained in passports, so.
No, that's, some of them are trained, but a lot of them have decided they don't wish to do that. And so they're being utilized in other areas because that's what they wish to be doing.
I'm just looking, this is all discussion, it was not, you know.
And I know we're getting close to either needing to not call your Dana or call her if there is a need.
I did not detect the need as part of our finance discussion. I think we got to a good place there. The next time was going to be to talk about the estoppel. I think she provided guidance to you, to several people on the board yesterday about where she thinks we are relative to a potential or a sale of the building by our landlord. Did you want to share what her guidance? And then we can assess whether we need to talk to her.
Well, we were just talking about a line item in the budget, why did we just glaze over that, what just happened?
Sorry,
The
what?
receptionist
Oh, sorry.
Salary.
salaries.
Sorry,
Yeah.
so, thank you, I'm not cutting that discussion short, but the supervisors, the attorney is available until 9:30. So, if we want to engage her at any part of the discussion, supervisor was saying we need to basically make that decision shortly. Got the number?
That's my only point. And I'm not trying to skip ahead in that meeting, but if anybody needs that, then now is the time to make that call. Or not. And so if you're comfortable, then we can just keep moving on. Okay,
I think. we're good.
Yeah, I think that the employee that is listed as full-time reception, I think that's misuse of the word. It's Alexia is who we're speaking to. She's not a reception.
Okay, so that's my bad.
Support.
So she's an office assistant?
yes,
So we went from, 5 employees to
We have
whatever we have now,
10.
10. And, the budget has increased substantially. And even for what we have, the actual versus the budgeted item is 237,000 different, but I do realize some may have been hired on later. So you're expecting the full year for next year. My question is, do we need that total amount of budget?
Well,
So what
also, we do have the numbers for Connor and Gallagher from June 2022 to June 2023.
Is that there?
I'm sorry?
I just put by. The last fiscal year.
Right, so June 1, 2022 to June 21 to today, up till today.
Well,
So even if I take 2022 out, let me just take, I mean, it's $30,000.
for last fiscal year.
That's, yeah.
And you're right, the postings are 1,500. That's true. But HR consulting supervisor, 4,000, HR consulting GOI, 4,000, HR consulting. Okay, so these are the block hours that we're paying and they're applying the bills against, right? Okay. So we actually,
How much have we spent so far this fiscal year?
34,21,87, if I'm reading this correctly.
I believe, whatever it says. That's what's recorded.
We spent $34,000.
No, 3,400.
Oh, okay, like, this one, heck of a first one.
So what I would suggest when it comes to the salary and HR, give us a day and get you some more times and expectations, and make sure that trustee Robinson has the most accurate figures that you can. I had
Well, sorry, those numbers came from the
so
account.
you already have that number? I apologize. I didn't know you already had that number.
Yeah, I know what the salary is for each position and what the anticipated spend is for each role. Yes, I have that.
Okay, so we're not gonna talk about that right now. We're gonna move on to the other topic and then we're gonna come back to that.
No, I think we should stay on that topic.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
But sorry,
so she's an office assistant, right?
I'm just generally saying that, yeah, we're increasing our salary budget by an amazing amount, even from last year, which is an amazing amount from prior years. Do we want to continue this trend or do we want to cut it?
So we're trying to increase services, and that takes people to do so. In the past, when you look at the prices that we're looking for salary, we're not trying to overpay anyone. And so again, I think that Accountant Nader gave trustee Robinson a variety of different numbers as to what the expectations are going forward. We're very small compared to, our staffing is very small compared to, for example, DuPage Township, which is right next door to us.
I would love to have senior services, but I think it might be something we need to put off for a year. Maybe have a telephone hotline on benefits and partner with the park district a little more with their senior program, which is excellent. But I mean, that is a big salary and that's a big budget item. And I'm not sure if we're ready.
This person that we hired.
I know.
And she even pointed out in our last meeting that we've got great resources around us to be collaborating with.
We don't have the physical
See, but
space at
that's
this
what happens
point.
when we make choices before we have the needs assessment completed. I think that's really what our takeaway needs to be, so that we are more strategic in future.
And so it's really important that you understand, like here, the one of the things that I've been so impressed with was Terry's ability to help address the township's constant daily needs of senior services.
I don't disagree that she's not excellent. I've heard great things
No
about
one's
her.
questioning her ability.
And
we're
she's
questioning that you're having a solution, which I don't want to be a broken record. You're creating solutions where you don't know what the real scope of the problem is.
Oh, it's really immense from a
don't have the assessment that we've paid for to have.
For example, since 2014, the life cycle of Americans in the United States has been steadily decreasing. 2020 to 2022 had the largest change in life cycle of an American. When you look at our impact page and you look at our needs assessment from the DuPage County, senior services are constantly one of our biggest needs. One of our biggest complaints has been the need for addressing those needs from the community.
Which need? That's
for example, accessing benefits and having somebody that can help talk through Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. That is really critical to getting the services that you're already due as an American.
And how many people are we serving in that capacity?
It was about 5 to 7, right?
It's growing. That is not an accurate number.
I know.
It is continuously growing, and for a community that continuously has been vulnerable at the front lines of the COVID epidemic, and as a growing community as we age, as a country. So the population, we hope is a community that we all can attain to be ourselves.
So I'm going to be very blunt. Supervisor Hewitt, you put everybody's job in this building at jeopardy when you hired people that the trustees didn't approve. And in fact, they said, don't hire, and you hired. Now we're in this position that our salary budgeted line item is loaded, that nobody felt comfortable doing that. And that's why they said no hire, but people were hired and now their jobs are at jeopardy because protocol wasn't followed. That's blunt, it's blunt, that's what it is. And we're trying to cut a budget and now there's people behind these numbers. Right. That is a really difficult thing to do. Correct. And you know that.
I totally do. And the thing is that we had been going as a township looking to hire. We took out those ads for hiring literally 9 months prior. So making sure that we continue and understand that we had already started a process that had already, by the time that last decision had been made, we'd already had ads out for some time. And again, we have again.
Do you know that I'm in staffing, Trust Supervisor Hewitt? Do you understand how many positions companies post every day that they never intend to fill? Just because you post it doesn't mean you have to fill it. There's no rule. There's no rule that says, when you post that, you better hire somebody. There's no rule. We have the choice. We can say we're going to freeze right now till we get our numbers together so that we know what we're doing. What are the needs? What do we have financially to commit to those needs? There was nothing strategic about what we've done. We just keep hiring people, and then we move them around, and then we hope it works. And then you're expecting us to be responsible and to not just to the people who've been hired, but to the community, and make sure that the numbers add up so that we're being, prudent with taxpayer dollars. And it's a very difficult position to be in, because nobody wants to suggest that anybody in this building doesn't have value and isn't providing great services. Then nobody at this table doesn't want to do the best for the community either, right? We want to do the best. We want to fill the needs, but we don't even have a completed needs assessment, and we've hired and hired and hired. One of your drivers left. He said he was sitting. There wasn't work for him to do except for keep unloading for the food pantry. And that's not what he was hired to do. So what she's saying, yes, it was blunt, but I think we're all feeling it. We're feeling the pressure of it, of being responsible for something that we didn't even have control over, because you made those decisions in spite of all of us sending messages, stop hiring, hold until we know what we're dealing with, what we're working with. Everybody in this building provides value. These are all excellent professionals who are doing great things with our township. That's not the question. The question is, it's not even a question, we've overspent.
And we can go grassroots too. We have the vans driving our seniors around. So you can have pamphlets. We can have a game night right here. Volunteers can come in and run a game night, simply small, grow from there. Hear conversations, treat it as a panel. Game night's not just game night, it's a panel for what seniors need and want. And then we build from there. Well, not only the NIU, but I think we need, a lot of ears listening instead of just putting program in place and hoping it runs.
So the last person that we hired was Jordan, and we without a doubt needed the ability to have a food pantry person in place. That was a position that we could not do without. And so I think the piece to understand is, again, we have made no moves to hire another driver. We have decided that, again, we've listened to the board. There hasn't been an ad placed. There hasn't been nothing that is happening.
You hired the senior services and you hired the food pantry director after the trustees said, do not hire, and you hired them. And so now I think you've put them in a position that they have to cut the budget. And they may either have to choose who it is or you have to, but the budget is bloated and it needs to be cut. So, what was it 3 years ago? Where was this budget then? So
it was about actually it wasn't very much off. So we can get back to that topic. But when it comes to, yes, I think that your opinion that the budget is bloated is not in alignment with where the budget is.
we've
but-
spent actual $372,000 last year. You're budgeting 610. The number of employees we had has at least doubled. At least we have now 10 employees. I thought it was more. So like 14, I thought we had. So, so we've got a really hefty staff. And they again said no, and you did yes. So now it's on them to bring it back to where it needs to be. And then unfortunately, you have to do the dirty work of whatever that means. You put them in a corner to do this.
That is not true, Craig Powitz, because our budget is more than able to accept the salaries and the positions that have been actually planned for some time. And the growth of our needs for services starts with the people that can do that.
So
if you want to keep going down this path, is there anything, Trustee Robinson, that you wish to have more information on, or is there any other pieces that you need with?
No, I hear two things. One, I think there's still, as part of the employment committee, I think there's how are people tasked, what are their roles, what are their responsibilities, and how do they support the services? I think that's something that the personnel committee is going to spend some time on. We're trying to set a budget. So the budget, I mean, I've got the numbers here. They total the 610,000, which is for the current employees, including the part-timers, based on the numbers that I've been provided by the accountant. What do we want to do with that number? Right? If you want, it wouldn't be appropriate, I don't think, to talk about person that you've already said they're all good people. They're all providing
excellent.
You said excellent. Yes. Okay.
That's
so are we comfortable with the $610,000 budget? And because you all know that you have our benefits on top of all that too, right? So it's not just the salary, it's that, right? So
like another 15,000 per person.
Is there also severance if we're,
what are severance policies?
what are our severance policies?
We don't have one.
And maternity, that's something that kind of fits into this category as well.
So maternity is one that I asked Accountant Nader to get more information on, but there's the option of when we come to November and October and we're reviewing our short-term disability policy, that can be improved. Apparently what I've been told is that businesses under 50 people tend to use short-term disability, so that pregnancy or maternity can be covered. The board needs to get the numbers from the accountant and from so that you can better understand what exactly that means from a small employee perspective of what you need a budget.
Is that FMLA, the short term? No.
Okay,
different.
we are under 100 and under 50 employees, so we don't. Okay. That doesn't apply to us because we're too small. But so it's federal maternity that we're too small for any of that to apply to us.
But if 3 people went on maternity leave at per se one time under short-term disability,
how would that affect us? Yeah,
it's that's not likely. What's more likely is the time that's going to be needed for the person home. Okay, and so that's the cost that is going to need to be incurred, is the 3 to 4 months of whatever is going to need to be off. Yeah. And so that's what the financially would need to be added to the budget if that were going to be something that the board wants to consider.
But that's a good point.
Yeah, I would ask the employment committee to weigh in as to what our policy should be around maternity leaves, right? And then I think that
and paternity, and
certainly,
yes.
And then that would impact on what the budget looks like. And I don't think we're ready to make that decision today. So I appreciate all the discussion we've had. I think we've reached agreement that I think based on the numbers that accounting services will probably go up by 11,000. We trimmed it down. I'll update the budget and send it. It'll be posted for our meeting on the 27th to approve. I think our discussion we probably can do without increasing legal fees. So that's fine. We talked about the other grants. We talked about taking all the grant money, basically putting it as expenses specifically targeted to grants. I like that thought. Probably going to require creating some new accounts, right? And we'll have to create a new category, I think, but that's fine. That's what our accounting support will help us with. I think the other thing we're talking about now is our, oh, I'm sorry, let me go back to Connor and Gallagher. So we've spent approximately 3,600 on them so far this year. Current budget is 20,000. What number would the committee recommend that we put for Connor and Gallagher for the total fiscal year? So how much more do we envision spending with them?
Well, when you look at that report that we just pulled, can you look at, so the block hours that are applied 4,400, it almost reads as if because those block hours were paid, that's not what we paid, because we paid for those block hours plus.
True.
Does that make sense how I'm saying that?
Yeah, we paid block hours.
And then additionally, we paid for the advertisements. Yeah.
Well, we're not committing any ads, so
We have no new hires coming.
no new hires coming. When they say, the HR consulting, so there's the block hours, which are 4,400, but then what does it mean when it says HR consulting DOI, 4,400? HR consulting supervisor, 4,400, what are those numbers coming from?
I'm not sure what DOI is the short for, but when it comes to the supervisor, then there's a half an hour in which there's a discussion about what needs help, what infrastructure,
Unknown caller.
Sorry.
or whatnot need to be done. So that's one of the pieces, but the main piece though is that when she's doing interviews with the people that are being recruited.
So she's cutting that off, okay. I got it, that's applied to that, got
Yes.
it. And then, okay. So we won't have any of those expenses.
So you brought up a good point, because we've been buying blocks. And it was approved to buy initial blocks. But I'm not sure that was an ongoing motion of continuing to buy blocks. Do you follow what I'm saying? I'm not sure we're handling that properly. It's just more of a question. We started it off with buying chunk of blocks.
Right, and we used our time?
Over and over and over. Right. But we don't have further contracts, further approval, authorization, thank you, except for the audit of expenditure after it's spent.
Well, they're also charging a lot for, background, but okay.
What
Anyway,
what number would we like to put? 10K?
No.
Okay. So
I would have liked to stay as close to 5 as possible, but I do feel like that's low, so I think I'm coming in at 6.
So you've spent 3,400 already. So you're saying another 2,600 for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
I would agree, because I think a lot of these services are available to us other places for nothing.
Well, you've got the
I'd say we keep it at 5 so that we control the spend, and we let them know they've got to be more efficient, and we've got to rely on DOI where we can.
Supervisor Hewitt, any concerns with setting a 5K budget limit for that professional for
Actually work with a number instead of letting these companies just
Add-ons. There's a lot of add-ons with all these
And
companies.
so understanding that we're starting a new, essentially making sure that we have best practices for our HR. I think 5 is very low. I would want to also make sure that we understood exactly how much we owe at this point, meaning that I don't know that everything has been added from the last week's payroll into QuickBooks. Meaning
what would they have
from
done
the
for
last
us?
week.
What would they have done for us last week? What would Connor have done for us last week?
That was when we were billed for example, some of the past expenses. So I don't know if if they've been properly put into QuickBooks yet.
And that wasn't applied, that bill wouldn't have been applied to the last block of time purchased?
Yeah, don't we pay the blocks ahead of time?
We pay them. I want to just make sure I want to make sure where we're at with the billing in that. So I would want to at least be given a day to make sure I know exactly where we're at with having paid it with our current charges.
Well, this is the report from QuickBooks. Did you see it?
Yes, but I don't know, for example, that everything has been added in, meaning that I'm not entirely sure
What's the timeline when a bill comes in before it's added to QuickBooks? Is there a policy about that?
there's not. I think that needs to be sharpened up with the SOPs.
That's fair.
So what had been proposed was current plus approximately 2,600, because you were saying 6,000, right?
Well, the extra 1,000 to cover for anything in my mind that we have hanging over,
Right, so I was gonna say,
Yeah.
if the supervisor gives an updated count,
then we'll have to amend, but
Right.
that was wiggle room.
We
Yeah.
also need to know how much
Yes,
time
ma'am.
is left on the block of times.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? So I'm sure we have more.
The Connor Gallagher is all in the system except for one that's still outstanding that we received after the cutoff date.
How much is that?
$233.50.
Good.
And that,
Okay.
is that for another block of time or what was that for?
It's for
Block the timer purchased in
A lot more
4400.
than that.
something looks like background services of the pantry charge.
Mhm. And we can still use them for background too. It's not,
It's a,
because I don't know pricing.
But we're not gonna have any background checks, so we shouldn't have to budget
Well,
for it.
again, there may be some,
Well, if we have turnover.
right,
Right, but still, I don't know. I mean, they're not charging a ton over, but background checks are $75.
So we also have to do DOT specific DOT pieces for some of our staff now because of
What
the
is
safety sensitive, meaning that they have a lot more strict programs.
What does the DOT stand for? I've just never.
Department of Transportation.
Oh, okay.
for the driver.
Okay.
it's a driver. Yeah.
I
But
thought it
it's
was
not
with
just the
HR.
driver. It's everybody who's been designated as safety sensitive employees.
Right.
And they are required to have, every 2 years, they're required to have a federal background check. The one that Connor and Gallagher does.
Can
They're
we-
also required to have Department of Transportation physicals every 2 years.
That's not a Connor and Gallagher check expense though, right?
That is,
Then that's not,
I think that's somewhere else in here.
That can be transportation.
It's in the transportation budget.
okay.
Um,
So I guess I'm just trying to understand why we're allocating so much, except the expense that we budgeted is for things that were for this year that we're not gonna have next year, so why would we even need to budget that high? We're not hiring all these, this number, this $3,400 number is based on all the hiring we did this year.
Are we still gonna hire on Indeed?
yeah, I think there was also some policy development and some validation.
Right, we're not gonna have that expense in this next budget, so we don't need $6,000, is what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense?
I do. It's just, if something comes up and the supervisor or the township needs to use those services and it exceeds the budget by whatever that, 5%,
10%.
10%.
When they have to come back for approval.
Right,
No, then
No,
we
you
have to change the budget.
You gotta go through a public hearing.
That's for a couple of $1,000. I just want to,
Mhm.
so I'm comfortable with 6. If you're comfortable, if the committee's comfortable with 6. It's a number.
What is six being planned for though? That's my question. All of these expenses are not expenses we're gonna have again. The HR manual, the consulting, the HR manual, all of the background, I mean, unless everybody in here stages, because we have more turnover. But even if we have more turnover, it shouldn't come to that dollar.
Well, no, I'm not saying 6 total. I'm saying 6. Well, I'm saying 6 total, which is only 2,400.
Minus the 26.
On what we've already spent. We already spent 30.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, so that's the debt. I'm saying 2,400
Okay,
delta.
my apologies.
No, I wasn't
Okay,
clear.
thank
I
you.
wasn't clear.
Okay,
So that actually offsets what we potentially had said the increase for the accountant would be too. So effectively, that number's coming down a little bit. Yeah, so we save some money. Thank you. All right, so the only other, I'm anticipating or thinking the only other discussion is around salary. Is around current level of staffing and the salary for that. So how do we feel? I mean, one is to, I think a full-time driver is probably in the, with, is
40 plus
45
benefits, which
was
is another
salary,
13,
right.
so that's like a $53,000.
Right.
roughly.
right. So that's,
I'm sorry, 40 or 45?
They were 45,000 per driver and
Plus
then
benefits.
benefits on top of that.
They're budgeted in other parts though, so it would propagate through.
Yeah,
The
If-
benefits are budgeted, under the
it's on,
benefits.
right,
Okay.
Like,
so that would
and,
come down as well.
Health and life insurance or whatever the insurance payments are. So that's one
That's
position.
significant. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
almost $60,000 right there.
Yeah, I'm not minimizing. I agree completely.
And I want to thank Joel Wolf for being trained so he can be a backup, you know, in the cases where we need it while we work through this time.
So. Anything, so that would, let's say that reduces 610 by 45K. And I know the operations manager and the supervisor feel that's constraining the services one deliver, but I mean, we're being respectful of taxpayer dollars.
We can grow and we need to substantiate the need for the thing.
You've been very consistent in that messaging. Any other suggested opportunities for savings? You know, the supervisor said there are people in place in anticipation of programs that we're going to develop and services we're going to deliver.
Which are going to have expenses.
The programs, right? I think a number of them are. Well, let me think. Are they budgeted?
Isn't there a luncheon planned for
Yes,
seniors?
Mhm.
Did we discuss that? Did you approve that?
so in your budget, there's $12,000 for your senior services. And that would be a part of them.
But we didn't approve that yet.
Well, it's been requested. It's in the right.
So the only thing that particular lunch is gonna cost is about the price of 15 Costco sandwiches
Okay,
currently.
perfect.
But, okay, so senior services programs is gonna cost $12,000 total. That's the
what is
budgeted item.
Currently.
And then, the employee, the
Why
cost,
are, yeah,
the cost of the,
what's the salary on that? And if luncheons are only $15, I mean, we're talking about $20, $25 sandwich trays or $30 sandwich trays, how are we getting to the number 12,000?
So there's a variety of different pieces in her budget line that we can that we wanted to make sure that we had to start off a new program, whether that was with having, for example, some tchotchkes for coming to programs. For example, there was a flashlight that was that it looks like it's a good idea to make sure that we advertise senior services, advertise what she's doing. And so understanding that she's going to need some printing costs, for example, with some of the pieces that she's wanting to do for senior services.
Covered under our office expenses.
There's, again, I don't have that particular budget right in front of me, but she had, and I am sure that we had gone over some of the options in there.
It's just that when we come up with a dollar amount, we shouldn't just throw numbers out. What is this? Have we done estimates? This is what this is going to cost. This is my plan. This is what this is going to cost. And that's how we come to this $12,000 number.
Yeah.
So that we can say, okay, that makes sense. But to say tchotchkes, I mean,
For example,
I can help you with getting wholesale pricing on tchotchkes so that the cost is half. But my point is, we can't just give a number without some explanation.
for example, it cost about $2,000 to keep up with some of the fixes with the medical lending closet. So that's in that senior service piece. She's in charge of the medical lending closet.
Who's
So
been fixing pieces in the medical lending closet to the tune of $2,000?
I'm not saying that is, for example, if you replace a knee scooter, a piece that is like, for example, like $800, if you replace one piece on that knee scooter.
I didn't think
Or
that was our
whatever,
plan for a lending closet. I thought it was donated, and if
So
it's
they are
broken, you
donated.
go.
So they
and
are
then
donated, but sometimes we
you
get
a new
pieces back
source.
that, well, we can't always, frankly, it's cheaper to replace a part, like a $50, $100 part on a $500 piece of equipment, than to just trash that piece of equipment.
Yeah.
For example,
Is that okay liability wise?
wheelchairs and we have a form that people sign when they come in to that, again, make sure that we are releasing ourselves of liability, but these pieces are all able to be serviced, not all of them, but we want to make sure that they're able to be used. If they're not able to be used in a way that one would trust one's mother with, and they're recycled.
Okay. I just didn't know about the expense of that program, and I guess I'm surprised.
We haven't spent anything right now on that.
Okay.
But how are we coming up with that number, Diane?
The reason why is
we need a number. We're not disputing the number's not real. We just want to understand what it's going to cover.
So, for example, I was given a bid of how much it would cost to fix 2 different wheelchairs. Each of those pieces were about $100. And so if we were to say, okay, there's a few pieces that need fixing, and one of the pieces that the director of senior service did was clean out the closet, give the medical lending closet, recycle a bunch of pieces that needed recycling, gave some of the pieces to Cure in DuPage to make sure that we had the pieces that had gone through a thorough inspection of whether they had any issues at all. So that was one of the things that happened last month.
I hate to pick on just $2,000 that you're mentioning here, but again, that's a cost that no one thought that we would be incurring. It was one that, you know, that was supposed to be donating and you know, lending out, but there was no knowledge that there was a cost to it. So you know, when you're looking at the senior services and you're saying their meetings and gatherings, you do have, you know, you've raised the budget from 500 to 6,000 for meetings in here. So it seems to me like we're doubling down on a lot of things. You know, printing, you've raised it from, well, we've actually spent 20,000 under there. We've budgeted 37 last year, and now we want to increase that to 45,000. That's for printing. That's not our copiers. That's, you know, newsletters and stuff. But you know, I think a lot of them kind of overlap each other. That one could be with the other. So you know, what I still go back to, there are people hired. There are things that are being spent money that you guys said no to, you know, that we're spending. So, you know, how do we bring it back to the people that you said don't hire these? What's their salary? How do we bring it back to that? And then if you felt there were cuts more than that, then, you know, then you have to go from that. If you thought past hires, you know, were an issue with this as well. Because everyone's salary has a budget next to it as well. So they have their, you know, their salary and then what they're doing.
Cost of what they're doing.
Correct.
I feel like the
So
senior,
in order to increase services, we need people to do that. So,
Right.
and again, one of the most marginalized communities that we have in our population right now is the senior community.
so if we think of it
making
from,
sure that we have the cost allocated to take care of that population, and those services are going to be really important for this township.
if we think about it from a monthly touch base too, and budget it so much per month and spend it, I think it makes us more responsible delivering those services. So that's kind of what I would like to see with the senior service budget is, yeah, we have this number. These are the big things we're going to do. And then we have the lunches, we know what that costs. And then monthly, plan something with X amount of dollars we have. I just think that is a more frugal and proactive.
And it's going to cost $35 in the sandwich tray. Well, that's 35 times 12. That's $400.
But we want to drain the budget. We want to drain this section of the budget and provide those services. So I don't know. I think.
And then you also have to look at some of these services. Are they being duplicated? You know, have they?
Well, that's what
you
I
know,
was saying.
especially.
Are we tapping into other communities
Correct.
and sharing some of this expense?
Yeah.
Because if you're only going to have 8 people sitting in a room or 15 people sitting in a room, maybe you combine, you know, informational opportunities with, and maybe you meet at the park district as part of something they're already doing, or and maybe it doesn't have to be lunch. I don't know.
And that's not something our senior Carla is doing right now.
Oh, she is.
She's coordinating the.
For example, Triad involves the park district. And that's a monthly meeting that, that has
Yeah,
been going
I
on.
just
for
still
some
don't
time.
understand where 12,000 is coming from. I got the 2,000, so so now we're at 10,000. Okay, that's
So the two that
$2,000
were
worth of repairs
hired-
every year.
The two that were hired were what? The food pantry, how much was that?
Supervisor of the food pantry, yeah. What's
I'd
that?
say the two,
60,000?
both the senior services and the food pantry director are both about 60,000 a year.
So that's 120. And then you have the driver that you had said, so that's
45.
another 45. So right there, you have $165,000.
Yeah, I would say we definitely need food pantry. I mean, and I've been
Well,
press majority.
that was said no to at the time,
Understand.
you know,
I
and
understand.
we have other people. You know, we're kind of rewarding.
So we need, we currently have a food pantry. I believe that we need to continue to provide food to about the 4,000 people every month that come to us that need food.
I'm not
One of the
saying that
most-
the money
it's
has to
one of
come
the
out
most
of the food
important
pantry salary.
Pieces that we do in this township.
I'm not saying that the food pantry, the debt salary amount needs to come out of the food pantry. You decide what's most important. Those were the numbers that were added without approval.
And
That's-
those, and again, this budget is coming up with a salary that is being inclusive of the entire township and its needs, and I think
We
trustee.
can't say it's for the whole township because we don't have a completed needs assessment. We don't know what our seniors needed. Did they need benefit support? Did we need a full-time person to help with benefits? Could that have been something that someone who's in operations or general assistance could have helped to be trained to do? And we just didn't, we weren't strategic about it.
I disagree with you, trustee guys.
And that's okay, we can disagree, that's what
Mhm.
happens in discussions, but we do it respectfully and not condescendingly. So, that's how we do it professionally. So I'm just expressing to you that, okay, let's say there's $2,000 in repairs on, the medical lending closet. Okay, all right, we want to give people safe devices, right? So we didn't plan on it, but if something comes in or someone uses it and breaks it, we want to be able to use it, fair enough, okay. We're still another $10,000. That we're not understanding what we're using it for.
I wonder if it's a conversation we should have with Terry.
But as the supervisor presenting these, when we're going to each department and asking them what we need from an operations perspective, you should have a very detailed plan. What is your plan monthly? What is your plan annually? What is this? What are the expenses that are going to be attached to this? And an explanation of why. That's how budgets are created. We don't just say, you know, I think it'll cost me about $10,000 to do what I want to do, and then get that approved, and then whatever happens. That's not how budget planning works.
Totally agree. And so trustee guys, what we did is we did exactly that. We went to each of the employees and we asked them what they would need for each of the different departments.
But I've
And
asked you
then-
for an explanation for the 10,000. You're like tchotchkes and lunch. That is not.
Okay, you're
$10,000.
asking me right off the top of my head for that. I don't have it right now on my computer that I can
Why
easily
not?
access. Okay, so all of this is being recorded, and so I want to go through my emails and you know do that all right now.
Well,
Should-
operations manager received the budget. This is his team. He should be able to speak to it. Are you able to speak to it? Do you have a report?
I wasn't planning on giving a report on the budget, on our budget this morning.
No, but I'm asking you, do you somewhere have where your staff provided you what their needs were and an itemization of those needs? When they gave you their numbers, do you have that?
Which two is in my computer?
Awesome. In your offices across the hall?
Yes, it is.
Would you mind retrieving it just so we have it?
No worries.
Thank you. It would just be helpful. We don't want to tell her no. We don't want to cut her line item without an explanation.
And I'm not quite sure what line item that is in, because actually I don't see 12,000.
And here's the thing is that they gave us, each of the employees gave us a budget. And again, each of those different budget items came from a variety of different pieces.
Okay. fair
So
enough.
each person, so what I'm trying to say is that when Terry gave us a whole page of pieces that she wanted to make sure were included, many were in membership, many were in different line items. So if you want me to say, okay, this was what specifically is going to that,
Yes.
I
yeah.
would suggest that you give me or Jordan or Gerald a few minutes to get that information,
I think
because
that's great.
again, we had put that in a variety of different pieces, and trustee Robinson here was part of the group of people that were
I
aggregating
don't
all
want
of
Terry
those.
to feel like she's not set up for success.
Agreed, and
And
that's
we
why
already cut the option for the software, so I want her to feel successful, so I don't want to say, no, she can't have $10,000, she can have 3. I don't want to do that, but if we have to make cuts, if she can't substantiate the spend, we have to be responsible, that's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to be difficult, I want to understand where the $10,000 is going.
Thoroughly
And I think
understand.
that that's reasonable.
Thoroughly understand, and understanding that there's those pieces that Terry had asked for were put into various segments of the budget. We can get back to you on that, or Gerald can go get that information for us, because there is a document that was sent from each of the different employees, making sure that we understand.
Does anybody else need to see that? Is anyone else interested? Am I the
Yes.
only one?
I would like to see.
Super informative.
Also understanding that, no.
So back on the salaries, you have, again, you have the actual of last year being $373,000. You're trying to budget for 610 this year. That's an increase of $237,000. So even taking out the $165,000 still is more than what we spent last year on the budget, on the salaries. And then with that, you will in turn have the benefit cost reduced as well.
And so I think we also have to understand that the big picture is where's our levy, for example, where is how much money that we have accumulated, and are we overspending when it comes to understanding what we're trying to do with increasing our service level. And we're starting primarily with this first primarily the needs of the senior services by addressing the transportation and the senior services.
Do the seniors want more taxes too? I mean,
this isn't where
but you mentioned the levy's taxing.
But I think it would be helpful to have like a comprehensive plan that is proposed to the trustees, so we could see what your plan is, so that everybody could buy into it. But exactly what we're doing is just saying we're throwing money at it. And I think, trustee guys, that's exactly what you're saying. What's the plan behind it?
And for
and
any
then
department,
everyone could.
yeah.
So
we
for
can
the
be
next,
behind it too.
and
Don't you
so
want us behind it? Any change management, best practice in change management is to make sure that you're giving as much information as possible so that people can have the buy-in, right? So that they're excited. And then we can even be out in the field. Isn't it great what our senior services program is doing? They're doing lunch and learns once a month. They're going to be offering this, they're going to be offering that. But we have to understand what we're spending. Right.
So I wasn't, again, I'm
Are
trying
we
to
gonna
make.
get the report, or are we gonna get it?
So I'm stuck here doing the meeting here, or working with this
Recess?
meeting. Jill, do you mind going to
It's
go
been
get
2
that? Thank
hours.
you.
Yeah.
Coffee goes in and out.
So,
Yeah.
so 165, is that something that you want to address?
It's been suggested we take a quick recess. What if we can do that, and the operations manager can get the information? Is everyone okay with that? You need to.
We need to
roll call.
take a.
Okay.
So we're looking for approval to take a recess or roll call vote. Let's see, Supervisor Hewitt.
Oh, somebody has to make a motion.
Oh.
So
Are you making a motion? I will second your motion.
I'll make a motion.
All right.
All right, and so roll call would be Supervisor Hewitt,
Yes.
Clerk Polowitz, Assessor Trowbridge, Trustee Robinson.
Yes.
Trustee Page, yes. Commissioner Young.
I
Trustee.
don't have a vote.
Yeah. Just go
Go
everybody.
Trustee Guys,
Yeah.
Operations Manager Gerald Wolf, and Trustee McGovern.
Yes.
We're rejoining the meeting. Supervisor or operations manager Wolf is getting additional information as requested by the committee. I think we're getting pretty deep in some of the budget lines, which is fine, because I think what we're asking about is the way the program is structured, the senior service, particularly senior services program is structured, and some of the information he's going to provide will give us that information. I think part of that, we had a good report from the senior services manager at the last board meeting. I think we should encourage them to participate in every one of our meetings, provide updates, the sort of things that you're asking about, maybe what the budget issues are, and maybe what they're forecasting. So I think that is a way to be stay as engaged as we can with the different new programs, particularly as they're being launched. I know the employment committee is going to be spending some time with each one of the employees as well. There's reviews coming up, and then there's goal setting for the new year, and I think that factors into it as well. So we will get some more information from the operations manager Wolf around some of the asks around the senior services program. I think we were talking about salary, specifically the budget for compensation. And I want to make sure I'm not getting ahead of everybody, but it seemed like the consensus was let's not budget for the second driver, which is a $45,000 savings. I don't think we were talking about removing or reducing the requirement for any of the current staff, but I'll leave that open for
I
discussion.
think that should remain discussion.
Okay, fine. Do we want to wait for supervisor, operations manager, Wolf, or do we want to take?
Is he still trying to get the email?
I'm not sure.
He's printing, it was a spreadsheet and trying to make it into a printable format, is taking a moment of time. Frankly, I was not expecting to have a full presentation. If I had known.
No, but there are explanations of what we're having. So, maybe we learn from this experience so that next year we come to the table with clear plans, or maybe discuss it before the budget meeting, right?
We had a full discussion, Trustee Robinson, with all the figures and everything.
Trustee Robinson is only one member of this board.
And he was in charge of putting together those documentation. So he had taken the data.
It's on me. So
Okay, so you have the report?
We sat and we looked through each ask from the different departments, and I said, okay, this I'll put in this budget line, this I'll put in this budget
Okay,
line.
but you saw the report of what the ask was.
I did. Yeah.
So you don't have any recollection of what the 10 to 12,000 would cover?
We went through every one of the asks, so no, I don't, to be honest. And then in our series of budget meetings, we said, okay, what, get me more details on what's in the legal supervisor. Yeah. So
I think only because we're looking at cutting. So where can we cut? We don't want to cut where we don't need to.
Right.
We don't want to impact her if we don't need to.
Yeah.
Right. But if we have an opportunity to reduce, that's the responsible thing to do.
Yeah.
We want her to be effective. We want her to have the resources she needs. But we don't understand what it is that she needs. It makes it difficult to get behind her.
Okay. Right. We're talking, I understand. So my bad for not being better prepared for this part of the discussion. We are talking about $12,000 in a $2.4 million budget. So
did you find where that was in the budget?
No, that they're scattered across a number of budget lines.
Okay.
That's what the
yeah, that's gonna be hard.
So I'm not minimizing the question.
No, it's not consequential. Really, we're talking about even more larger numbers that we'll discuss in a different time, but we're gonna have to figure out how to get another personnel meeting in before next week. We want to discuss it.
Actually, I need to come. One of the things I needed to speak to the employees about is their proposed job changes. If anybody is available to come to, yeah.
As long as you do it early.
Yeah, I will get up. Up in the morning. We're retired now. Not used to getting up before dawn.
I just love that you're retired. I love that for you.
Sorry. So we're trying. Has to be finalized by the 27th. Should be posted 3 days ahead, so we should have a budget document by, let's say, Friday.
Today's Wednesday.
Thursday, Friday. So we've talked about a number of the budget lines. Sounds like we may want to look for some savings, and specifically around some of the budget asks from some of the programs you have talked about. We've talked about senior, maybe there's others, senior services, and you're talking about potentially some of the salary, what the salary number
so
should
if
be.
we get the meeting posted today, we can have the meeting Friday?
2 days. Are you talking about the salary now? Or are you talking, I mean, you don't need to talk or you do whatever you want, but you can just pick the number that you're looking at. You don't have to choose, but how to cut it.
Right.
You're just cutting it. So if the number is that this was,
if we say we want to cut $100,000 or we want to cut 120,000,
yeah, 165 of being the driver, and the 2 that were said not to hire that was hired, that's 165,000, which is still increasing the budget from the actual of last year. Do you know what I mean? So
yes.
You're not cutting, you're just cutting from a 610 budget that's been put in there.
And sorry, actuals last year, remember that for a certain period of time, there were a number of roles that weren't filled, and they were filled by contractors, right? So the actual spend from last year is a number, but I'm not sure it's an accurate number as to what the projected salary cost would have been last year.
When you say we're filled by contractors, well, that's even more expensive.
Well, that's what we're cutting. So the contractor numbers are going to be down this year. So that, as I'm saying, so the salary numbers should be higher, but the contractor numbers should be
Do you
lower.
have those broken out? Because this is the biggest budget item, really,
Yeah, no,
$610,000. So, I mean,
Is it something we have to go into
that is
executive session
actually
to
not,
discuss, or is it something? we can
I'm not
discuss?
talking specific people,
Okay.
but I think, you know, that's where everything's been added on. So again, the actual is kind of an inflated number from the years prior because more and more staff has been hired on anyway. Do you follow what I mean? We have more staff today than we do.
The compensation disclosure, right? Is what you're pulling up compensation.
I'm just looking for our local township next door to us and where they were at with just trying to make sure that we're clear on where we're at with spending compared to local areas.
Compared to one other, yeah.
Mhm.
What that number look like that you've had pulled up?
It was not for enough people, it was just for the elected officials. But I think the other big picture is again, we have a budget that has a surplus that would allow us to invest in future services, in which is what we're starting with the employees that we have, and that's how the salaries have been budgeted as such, is to allow for the growth of our services, which need to start with employees to be there to grow them.
There's not a question that we want to make sure we have great value in services, but we still don't even have the needs assessment to understand what's maybe there's services. There could be services that we haven't even looked at that are going to be a priority, but we can't even we can't even, make that determination and come up with a budget for those items because we don't know what they are.
So understanding that, for example, York Township, Wayne Township, they're much smaller. Wayne Township is much smaller than us, has an extensive senior center. Downers Grove Township, right next door to us, is bigger than us, but does have, again, an extensive senior center. We're not even trying for any of that. We're just trying to have some better programming, starting with a staffer that would help include that. And so looking at York Township, wow, they have a fabulous, well-run transportation system that has been around for decades. They have an extensive senior service, and it's very comparable to our population.
We have 3 park districts with amazing senior services that I have a breakdown of everything that they offer the seniors for very minimal, if not any dollars. So there's Naperville. I don't think they even charge, except for certain programs. They have a very full array. Lisle, I think it was like $60 a year. And Woodridge was, I may be getting this wrong, it was right around $50 as well. These were very minimal costs for these. I'm not really meaning to pick on senior services. That is not that is not the problem. The problem is that you hired people that the trustees said do not hire. So a cost was incurred that was not approved, and it was said not to. Now it needs to, in my opinion, come back out of the budget. So because this is numbers that are being spent unilaterally. I'm not saying it needs to be a senior service. I'm not saying it needs to be food pantry. But this is an elevated budget from years past. So I think we're on this mission to reduce the cost. That's a big ticket item that's been overspent without approval, and it should be fixed. So that's at $165 is the easy, $165,000 is the easy amount that that's been overspent.
So
Appreciate the
looking-
perspective.
I'm
Other
just gonna
thoughts?
add one little thing, the numbers just are just frustrating to me. And I understand that they're trying to get up and running, but the person's been here for a while. Last month, they couldn't say exactly, but they got between 11 and 13 people, with senior citizens that they contacted. Okay, just on her salary, not her benefits, that is between $380 and $454 per contact.
Mhm.
I'm just gonna suggest that's not a prudent use of taxpayers' dollars.
I understand the math you're talking about, and I understand what supervisor is saying. We launched this program, it's getting momentum. I'm not questioning anyone in the store, so I think what she's saying is give her time. I think that's what she's asked for. Give her time to launch the program. Let's assess how its value to deliver to the community. I fully support trustee Geist's concern that are we targeting the right areas, because the assessment hasn't necessarily been completed, and we have not done an assessment as to what other services are in the community and are we duplicating. So I think there's some elements of that. So I think on the table is this let's talk specifically senior services. Is this a service that is critical, that is important to establish and get running because of the value it's going to bring to the community? And I think we all agree that very competent, very capable, excellent resource running the program. Is it delivering? Is it what we want to deliver as part of the services we deliver to the community? In addition to the transportation services for seniors, which is a big part of what we're trying to get launched as well. So I understand the numbers you're talking about. Again, it's a program that's ramping up. And how do we feel about how it positions against the budget requests as well as other programs that we're delivering? So
Thank you.
that would be my perspective on it.
Yes.
Where are the lunch and learns held?
Going to be here.
Here? But why is there rental space?
Oh, maybe not that. I'm good. I won't. I thought that's what we talked about.
Again, this is made sure that that if there are costs that they can be covered, and this is a proposal, understanding that, for example, the Park District has offered to allow for rental space, and they're very close, and we're looking to work with them.
So this is what was submitted previously, or this was created today?
No, this is familiar. I've seen this before.
This is what was submitted by the Director of Senior Services.
Oh, this is okay, for the budget, okay.
Right. And I think if you look, the newsletter, so that, and actually we already cut what we envisioned the newsletter spend to be, and that was a significant portion of what she'd asked, had asked us for. Training education conferences was rolled into the training conferences education budget line.
Why would a flu shot clinic have a cost?
You have to pay for the person to come out.
Could I get a copy?
Oh, I apologize.
Sorry.
There's, I don't see anything under here for repairs of the medical lending closet, but I do see a $2,000 spend for training education conferences.
Mhm.
So I don't even know that we have the medical lending closet expenses on here.
And volunteer
need to factor
appreciation,
that.
2,000?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. What is the volunteer
That's a lot.
appreciation for $2,000? What is?
That has been, again, this was essentially divided up into different segments, and I believe that the events were taken out of our budget, so I don't believe that is a part of the budget anymore.
Right.
Okay.
I think that's true.
I think that's high.
So this was prior to any discussions. This was written about a month ago. So at the start of the season was when it was again started. So if we had known that you had wanted this all to be again re-itemized, it would have been done. You just didn't know that this was a request.
Then
So to your point earlier, trustee guys, these sort of things should be part of the next time we review a budget package. So my
I think we
oversight.
should have a plan, yeah, like, so lunch and learn sessions, and what are those gonna be each month? This month it's gonna be benefits, this month it's gonna be,
There is a really good plan, and it's coming out in the newsletter. She's got the first 12
no,
or
he
the
was
first
just
6.
asking, let me finish. He was saying, is this what you're looking for? I was like, yes, not today, but like, as he said, in the future, I'm like, yes, in the future, I would like to know what the plan is so that we understand what we're paying for. And maybe we'll look at things and go, wow, this is really great. Maybe we should throw more money at this. But we don't even have the opportunity to do that because this is,
Well, this is right. So this was to set the budget. And then I think you're right. How do the programs run? And I think there's two elements to that. One is the employment committee is going to look at what the responsibilities of every person in their roles are to help establish those. And then I think, as we suggested, maybe each one of the program directors talks about maybe at a board meeting, here's what I plan for here's what I've done, and here's what I plan for the next month, and maybe for the next quarter.
You might also want to do it, as a strategic planning group, because your strategic plan should drive your budget. And if you have the knowledge of it should be done prior to starting the budget, which would be a multi-month process of digging in.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah,
agree completely.
this way
we're not scrambling.
You're exactly, and you're also looking at what was a success and what wasn't the past year.
And we did try to get that strategic planning in for the last few months. We've just not been able to schedule it. July 18th is still on the books, but we've been trying to set that date for a few months. So we agree, and that strategic plan will help for the next 3 and 10 years.
So I think back to salaries, compensation, 610,000 is the approximate number based on salaries of people who are in role, including 45,000 for a second driver who's in here right now. What would you like? What would the recommendation from the committee be?
I mean, I think we need to find a way to cut $165,000.
I think that's too drastic. I think.
You asked me.
I'm sorry. Okay.
You asked me.
Right, and then I was offering my opinion. I'm
Even
sorry.
process it, so that's drastic. I mean, like, I'm just telling you, we need to be looking at.
So I also agree with that, but I would like to hear another opinion on how.
Well, so what were the 3 roles? One was a salary, one was.
No, we're not looking at specific roles.
Well, but that was the way it was presented by the clerk around the 3 roles. So food pantry, I think, is an essential role that it be filled. I appreciate all the dialogue around how that happened. We're moving forward. I think we have to have someone in that role. So I think I'm not sure that the township can deliver the service it needs to deliver with that impact to the personnel count. That's my assessment.
I think you misunderstood what I said. I don't think you appreciate it, because I did not say that those salaries need to come out of those positions. I don't believe that at all. I think that we've overextended ourselves with salaries, and now we're backtracking with a higher budget. Those were 3 that I identified that are easy to quantify, because those were 2 salaries that you specifically said, no, don't hire, and they were hired anyway. So you did not get the opportunity to even adjust anything to say, okay, we want the money being spent in the food pantry or senior services, but how about we take it from here? You didn't get that opportunity. You're pushed into a corner into approving this. So I am not aligning those positions with what to cut. I'm aligning those dollar amounts that you never approved. And as you said, do not hire the second driver, and that's on here too. So that was my source. If you want to cut more, I mean, you can do that, but this to me would be the minimum of what you do. And then, I mean, then you adjust. So I do have a question for you. Is this the discussion you had with Supervisor Hewitt in the meeting back there about salaries?
No.
Okay.
She was asking why. She was asking about the backup. What more things should we've had to prepare for this meeting? So that's what that.
Okay.
So we had a budget of 510,000 last year, correct? That was our budget last year.
For salary?
For salaries, right? Anticipating that we're going to have some level of increase for inflation or performance. What if we use that as a baseline and we increase that by some percentage to reflect potential salary increases. That was the number that was approved by the board last year.
But that was before you started these committees because you were aghast at how much we were spending because we were wildly overspending, and that's why you started these committees. So before that, you trusted that the 510 was the right number, and that's why it was approved. Now you're coming in and quite honestly, it's crisis mode, you know, how far these budgets have gone up. So I personally, I know I don't get a vote, but I really think that was an elevated number. And do you really want this number to be that high?
And you all need to think about what it takes to run a township with the quality that you're looking to have. If you all are looking to, you know, increase the retention, then I think decreasing the salary levels, essentially looking to let people go, is going to be extremely difficult for the internal mechanisms of the staff. I think it's going to be detrimental to the services that the township receives. And I think from a financial perspective, we're not looking forward enough at what we're trying to do in the long term. So this is a year that we're needing to build our services, and we have the opportunity to do so. If we decide, if we decide to go from a 510,000 perspective and add 1%, you're looking to directly fire people. And so if you're going to do that, then I highly recommend against that. You've already chosen not to add another driver. That's going to put on a number of stresses for the current driver. But if we're going to cut that position and look forward, I think that all needs to be taken into account, that we've been planning to make these changes for years, increase service and increase our ability to deliver services. And we're now getting the chance to do that. So if you now essentially cut the knees out from under some of these services, I think that really needs to be weighed in light of the fact that last year and the year prior, we were almost $1 million under budget in our spending in 2021. And last year, we're quite a bit under as well. So understanding that we're likely still going to be under budget no matter what we set, because we're very fiscally aware. Our costs are going down every month on virtually everything. We're cutting as much as we possibly can, it seems. So I think when you look at the staffing, that's going to be the core, and I think that's going to be cutting too far. But
shouldn't we plan strategically based on the assessment for the next year, so that we're actually looking at a budget? I mean, I don't understand why the assessment. I don't understand why we don't have that, because that would have been such a great tool for us to use to substantiate what we're doing.
And again, it would have been great if we had scheduled the time. We were trying to get together with our schedules for a few months. And on a side note, I see the assessor Trowbridge is looking to go.
I'm chairing a meeting in 25 minutes.
Okay, and so I guess my question is do we need any information from him for the next meeting, or how long I guess I'm just wanting to make sure that we have all information that we need. If we could go maybe to the next comment so that we could, or to the next piece, if we wish, I'm just trying to be aware of our timing.
Yeah, I'm much longer.
While he's here, what I would like to recommend the trustees consider is to appoint him as the lead person, hire the attorney that wrote the lease for $1,000. Communicate to the landlord that he has to supply us with what's required by the lease.
It's already been done. Yesterday, when the attorney gave us that notice, I sent it to the landlord. The landlord then.
You sent it without authorized by the trustees? No,
I asked what I did was that when the attorney requested that we get the sale, the 60-day, the sale of the notice of
the
sale.
Terms that are required under the lease.
And
she asked you to get that?
She asked me to get that.
And you did that without trustee approval?
Because she asked that we get that.
Who runs the township? The lawyer or the trustees?
So in order to have a more full discussion, having the piece of sale is what you all will need to have a full conversation. Meaning that the notice of intent for sale is the piece that we need to finish this conversation. That's what she asked for us to have. And so that's what I'm trying to make sure you have.
When that comes back, I suggest that you appoint him as the person to go through a financial analysis that needs to be done to determine whether the trustee should even entertain an
Can we
item.
do that? Can we just do that now? Can we make that motion now?
Not on the agenda.
Well, what is on the agenda? It's the discussion of the
Possible action.
possible action.
Isn't that possible action?
It's a special, I mean,
It's not related to the budget, but.
This we're not, well,
No,
we're
for next
referring
meeting.
to the second
Oh.
meeting.
well, you can't do it now, but you could do
Right,
it when
you
we
can do it
open the
next
next meeting.
But I would think it all falls in there, no?
Why would, well, under.
Sorry, we're talking about the next meeting.
Yes, we're talking about the next
meeting. We're supposed to start at 9, but here you do a quick meeting.
All right.
If anybody has any questions, I really go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
very
you,
much.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Jean, or trustee, please, we haven't heard from you on the conversation.
I would like to have conversations with the trustee guys and I have talked about having conversations with the employees in the office, going over their job descriptions that have been changed. So we can maybe get a better idea after having conversations, who does what. We might be able to come up with some cutting here and there.
We may be able to come up with some recommendations where we have some overlap.
Right, right.
So how would you like to schedule that to come to a final compensation number that can be posted Friday? And the board, the finance committee stands behind, right? Or do you want to, go ahead.
Let's have the conversations over the next 2 days.
Yeah.
On Friday, we'll meet as a finance committee, or could we meet Saturday morning?
As a finance committee, you want a follow-up meeting? So you're not gonna have a formal personnel committee meeting, you're just gonna be.
Right, I don't think we would have time between now and Friday.
So you're recommending a further finance committee meeting on Saturday to finalize the compensation.
Well, we have to be prepared, we have to have time,
I understand.
right? I'm thinking out loud, and that's.
Okay,
Do we have quorum?
I'm not
I have a
justifying it,
flight
I'm
at
thinking out
8
loud. We have to have
Do we have
time
quorum?
to.
Saturday.
What she said?
I have a flight at 8.
I think we'll have four. But I also want to hear your opinion on compensation.
How about we make sure we
Conversation?
talk to you before, Christie?
Yeah.
We'll trust you.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I'll
we'll
be
make sure we
communicating
talk.
With you into what we learned
Yeah.
from the employees, yeah.
Individually. not with you.
Right.
We got you.
All right.
Yeah, we could.
Any
over-
thoughts now?
today,
I do have
Friday,
thoughts.
Thursday, Friday,
Um,
make as much time as we need to, we can cover.
I mean,
pretty
I
much
do
the whole
think that
other
senior
file.
services
Senior
needs to be.
services is-
at least
she's not
reduced
here,
to
correct?
time and focus.
Terry
You-
is
you do
out
need that component
Tuesday,
for
Wednesday, or was it
freedom, so you
Wednesday,
don't have
Thursday
to-
this week? She
someone
had
in
training.
the department.
Yeah,
Then
I'm
I
not
think you can have.
Yeah,
I think
either
it's
Tuesday,
just-
Wednesday, or Wednesday, Thursday. I was in contact with her and I forget which.
Okay.
So
She's
I
training
would
for
reduce
what?
that job.
Okay.
It would probably give it to
Yeah.
the same person,
Sorry,
but
trying to control, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, so. We've made agreement on a number of items. I can update draft budget based on what we've talked about. Compensation is still an open issue. Request for a follow-up committee meeting, finance committee meeting, Saturday morning at 8 AM to finalize the discussion on compensation.
Sure.
Wait, did we say 8?
I've heard 8, but I'm whatever number.
I did have a couple other questions that I could send back to you, but the transportation pays has been, the amount is going up. Although I thought we were supposed to be reducing, like, is that the, what's in that, 3106?
So Pace hadn't billed us properly, or we didn't receive the bills for about 5 months. And so they sent us about 5 months of bills, and then there was a adjustment from 2020 that needed to be done. And so we really don't have the ability to determine when Pace bills us.
Will we be all caught up to date?
I believe that they just gave us our March bill, which is pretty caught up for them. They usually don't give us our, we're usually 3 months behind before they give us a bill.
Because the focus was to lower that number. So I would just double check that on there. On the Career Center, I'm gonna go back to that, you know, we're looking to give $10,000 as a support for the job club, the Career Center, that our township residents still need to pay to be part of, unless they ask for a stipend. Other townships around give nowhere near that amount. Some don't give any, but others give like $5,000. I think Naperville might give more, but that's because it's in Naperville and it is supported by Naperville. I would like that to personally go back down to 5,000, which is because it's kind of a donation. It's a support for them. We're still paying for services unless our people cannot afford it. Note again that counseling and meetings have gone up from 500 to 6,000. The mental health board we talked about. I just want to make sure travel, meetings, and dues went from a $7,000 budget where we spent $8,700 last year to $25,000. Membership fees, conferences, and trainings.
Yeah,
So that's huge.
yeah, and I think you pointed out that when it's itemized, it's only 15,000.
Oh, that's the one that, okay, so, well, okay, good, but, it's still $15,000 that has gone up from a budgeted item of, 8,000, you're right, and I can't say it both ways, it's 15.
No, but it is an increase, and I think
Yeah,
part of that,
right.
the people and staff needs, okay, go ahead.
And, food pantry expenses are going up, you know, we spent $1,763 last year. That's food pantry expenses. We're budgeting $10,000 last year, and we only spent that. And this year we're adding it to be $15,000. And we're also have in there pantry soft in 10-1625. So we're doing, so what I'm talking about is 22,616 food pantry expenses other. So we last year we budgeted 10, but only spent 1,700. This year we're spending budgeting $15,000. But keep in mind that does not include the pantry soft, because pantry soft is on another line item budget of 1,625. If you look, and that's computer program supervisor, it's on that, which quite honestly is, yeah.
No, thank you.
So it's a little bit ambiguous, you know, that's another big increase.
It's a good point. And part of that, I think some of the expenses we envision to be handled through the ARPA grant. So that number could probably be less.
So we can take it out of there because you're gonna put it on a grant thing.
Right.
Line item, right?
Pantry soft?
No.
The pantry soft was gonna be a ARPA grant, right?
Right.
Or no, I don't know if you were doing that at all or not.
No, I thought we didn't approve.
We
No,
deferred.
you did not.
We didn't
approve it.
say no, we didn't say yes. All right.
So it's time to decide, you know, before Friday, or the meeting, Saturday's meeting. What was it also? Again, well, I think I said everything. Do you have the 32,950 for NIU?
Yes, I've made it. I reflected that
Okay.
request.
Okay,
And where are we at with that?
With the-
Supervisor?
I think that was the meeting she was saying.
July 18th, I said that a few times, that July 18th, 3 o'clock. I'll remind everybody, I'll send everybody a note again.
Ahead of how far out we are.
We tried for a date in June, we tried for some dates in May and April, we just couldn't get everybody's schedules together. So July 18th, it has been.
All right, thank you. Any other comments on budget?
I really want to make sure that there's a forensic audit added in, but I hear that hasn't been agreed.
Our accountant had,
Yeah.
I thought our accountant had said we
Such
really
neat.
didn't need a forensic audit.
I thought she's kind of along that line too, or at
So-
least recovery.
I think that the community needs some due diligence with regards to the payroll issues that have been persisting for years. And wanting to make sure that there's a resolution once and for all for those issues, as opposed to bringing them into another year.
I think we're close on resolving the issues, but I know there's some new ones identified that we have to deal with.
I have not heard of, I guess I'm not aware.
This highway commissioner shared some concerns around the way that his bonuses were processed at the end of last year for his employees. That's one of the issues.
But I don't think you need to explain it.
Yeah,
Right, I agree. So that's what I think.
There's some accounting issues that need to be addressed, but I don't think.
Yeah, right. I pulled that from it. Supervisor Hewitt and operations manager, can you give me your update? Remember we took notes last time we got together on the grant. Can you share that and I'll add that to the information packet?
Sure.
Anything else? This has been wonderful. I appreciate everyone's due diligence and time in this. Yes, thank you. All right. Motion. Any sorry.
No executive session.
Right.
Needed, so, do adjourn anyway?
Well, any did I have updates by
there's,
elected official comments?
yeah,
Any elected official comment?
No, thanks. I'm sorry.
Nobody? No executive session needing, a motion to adjourn?
I second.
And then,
In favor.
all in there again.
Aye.
Right.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you.